in terms of creating social district.
Good evening, all. I welcome you to the January 8th meeting of the Grosse Pointe Park City Council. Our first meeting of the new year. Glad to have you all here today. We will begin with our roll call. Before doing that, however, I will note that Councilor Drever is excused this evening as he battles an illness, so we wish him well. But with that, I will ask the clerk to call the balance of the roll.
Councilmember Kohler.
Present.
Councilmember Gallagher.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield.
Here.
Councilmember Wiener.
Present.
Councilmember Drever is excused. Councilmember McMillan.
Here.
Mayor Hodges.
Here, thank you. With that, we have a quorum. We will move into the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on our agenda, fellow council members, is approval of the consent agenda. A motion would be in order.
So moved.
Moved by Wiener. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Caulfield. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kohler.
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Wiener.
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan.
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. And just for the benefit of the public, we did not invite discussion on that item because it is a consent agenda. And just so you know what items were contained in that, if you don't have your agenda in front of you, is approval of our December 11th minutes, our committee and commissions report, and finally our December 2023 invoice approval. All of that is available online in the packet if you're interested in learning more. Next on our agenda is public comment. This is our opportunity to be in dialogue with our community. We're glad that you're here today, and we invite any comments you may have. We just ask that you stay within the 3-minute limit, which Mr. Seisland will control for us. And we ask that you approach the podium and state your name and street that you live on. Is there anybody here who would like to be heard? Yes, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Bowl. I live on Nottingham, and I just like to bring to the City of Grosse Pointe Park's attention that there is a fire hydrant on Verner between Balfour and Nottingham that was knocked down during the storm in July, and it's still sitting there. And we've alerted the Department of Public Works that this is potentially a problem, especially since we had a fire in Beaconsfield a year ago. So just that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Location again, sorry? Yeah, where is that?
It's between Verner, or it's on Verner between Balfour and Nottingham, pretty much right there at Somerset, where it comes in at Defer.
Kelly, is that the one where it was kind of lifted?
Yeah, it's cracked. You can see it's just like kind of cracked.
I took some pictures of that and put it in my campaign material as recognized as a fix.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard this evening? Yes, welcome. McKeever.
Hello, Patrick McKeever, 916 Grand Marais. My issue is pretty straightforward. I think the city is getting dirtier, visible litter, and just small pieces of trash, not like piles of trash, but even driving over here from my house on Grand Marais, there's some litter right out in front of the library, on the street, in the median. I have an office in the park, and so I'm there quite a bit. And it's not particularly clean, which is unfortunate because so many good things are happening. And it's beautiful with the lights and everything, but I think it detracts from the city overall. And I think it's getting worse. I think people are throwing trash out their windows. I see beer cans and soda bottles and Dorito bags and things like that. So I think we should impose a pretty stiff fine for littering. I know that's difficult to enforce, but maybe we could have some signs, as you drive into the park, at the different entry points. and kind of broadcast it and get a little public attention. I think the recycling, the trash and recycling procedures need to be updated. I can't believe some of the things my neighbors put in the trash on windy days that ends up blowing all over the neighborhood. So maybe communicate better to the public that when you put your uncovered recycling bins out, that you should put the heavy things on top instead of the styrofoam. So those kinds of things. So that's my issue. I do think it's getting worse. It's something I'm pretty type A, so it's something, if you don't notice, you might not notice it, but if I brought it to your attention now, and as you make your way about town, take a look. You'll see it's not that clean anymore, unfortunately.
Thank you, Mr. McKeever.
Thank you.
Appreciate your commitment to quality. Anybody else for the public comment portion of our meeting? All right, with that, we will close the public comment portion. We'll move to our next item, which is our manager's report and public safety report. Mr. Seisland, I'll begin with you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hodges, members of council, and the public. So, as I discussed at our last city council meeting, the city's putting forth an effort to look at updating our city website, looking at other vendors, looking at our current vendor, not only with the website, but also Parks and Recreation. Right now, Grosse Pointe Park and the other Grosse Pointes use a system called RecPro. It's the same system that, it's been used probably 10, 15 years, that we're looking to see if we can make some enhancements to that, allowing residents, easier time online. So Marty or Tim or anybody with their kids, don't have to rush after work to be able to sign up, for an event. So just looking at ways to make, things easier for our residents. DT is almost complete with its LED project. If you are a resident that is experiencing that, a lot of the light is maybe shining into your backyard and that a shade could help, please contact the Department of Public Works at 822-5100, and we'll be there to relay that message to DTE. Just wanted to clarify as well that I think it was about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks, that there's another petition letter regarding marijuana that's asking residents about their feelings and such. This is an outside party. This is not from the city of Grosse Pointe Park. So in case you've received it, this is not from the city. We talked about capital improvement. This is something that we're working on in the city, and we hope to bring our first draft to our next planning commission meeting later this month. The city did complete in December its sewer asset management plan. So this was goal of the city last year to do condition assessments of our sanitary sewer mains and manholes inspected throughout the city. And so we're going to continue on that front. And then as well, we do have MuniCode online, which was about a year and a half process where the ordinance review committee worked with Assistant City Manager Rothy on approving that. So thank you, the ordinance review, as well as members of council, for getting that done in our last meeting. And then just a little bit of a heads up, we're doing some reshuffling within the city hall, looking at different departments and operations, and that probably in the next few weeks you will see some changes that we will be moving the building department and the city clerk's office down into the basement. The building department used to be down there around 15, 16 around there. This will help significantly, again, just management of different staffs with park passes, the early voting process that'll be happening. And so you'll be able to go up to the treasury office, for treasury and payment, and you've got your park passes, building department, contractors all down at one level. And so that's what we have going on. There was also residents might have received a notice that came from the Great Lakes Water Authority over the last several days. This is not to be concerned with anything with your drinking water. This was a technique that the GLWA was in violation of. This notice was Grosse Pointe Park, Highland Park, Hamtramck, the city of Detroit, and one other community. And so GLWA is investigating that cause, and we'll be updating this down the road of what it is or what they can provide to help our residents out. So you saw some mail, and that was what the reason was. That being said, too, I have the distinct privilege. This is pretty exciting to do, but with our chief, Jim Bostic. And so I'm going to read a statement out here. Our Grosse Pointe Park Public Safety Director, Jim Bostic, has been selected to attend the FBI National Academy Session 290 on March 31st through June 6, 2024 in Quantico, Virginia. He is one of 250 people throughout the world to attend this session. The FBI's National Academy, known as one of the premier law enforcement training programs in the world. Established in 1935, the National Academy provides advanced investigative, management, and fitness training to senior officers who are proven leaders within their organizations. In addition to undergraduate and graduate level college courses offered in areas such as law, behavioral and forensic science, understanding terrorism and terrorists, and leadership development, students forge lasting connections that strengthen global law enforcement partnerships. It is an honor for Jim to be selected to attend this prestigious program, as less than 1% of police officers who have ever worn the badge get this opportunity to attend this unique professional development training. Without further ado, I'd like to give a hands up.
So the best is about to get even better. Congratulations, Chief. And your team who's here to back you up, because nobody does it alone, right? So we appreciate all of you and what you do on behalf of the community to protect our property, our lives, and our tax base. You're the best. We're very fortunate to have you.
That's it for me, and Ms. Jen's got it.
Any questions for our city manager, and then we can turn it over to our chief?
I just have one quick question.
Yes, Councilmember Gallagher?
Great Lakes Water Authority document that came out, was that funded by GLEWA or was that out of our, it was not out of our budget?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just, thank you. Just two questions, Nick, for the shades for DTE. Have we had some individual residents that have reached out and gotten a shade?
3 or 4. Yeah.
Good. And just for the public record, should they not get the quality of service they expect from DTE, what's the best way to contact you to make sure we nudge them forward?
That they get the quality of service that actually show up.
Correct. Yes.
Please definitely let Public Works know, and also carbon copy myself, and that would probably be the best. So just please let me know. We'll get on it.
Awesome. And then one more, I did see some work when I went to play basketball at Windmill Point Park. Is there any status on the new playground facility? How it's progressing?
Yes, they are placing today the engineered wood fiber on that playscape surface. So I don't know if it's all complete today, but I know they're going to finish that up. That residents soon will then be able to use that. And then probably at a later date, we'll coordinate a day with the foundation to do a opening of some sort, to the community and such. So at least we want, for a couple of these days we have had, you'll actually be able to get out there.
Right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Anything else for our city manager before we move on to our police chief? Chief Bostic, welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Mayor, members of council. First, I would like to defer so we can go directly to our resolution that we have started.
Sure. Regarding the donation?
No, Dr. Herzog.
Oh, yes. Okay, sure. So I guess it does fall under public safety, doesn't it? Welcome to our Dr. Herzog. I hope somebody had their little lint remover to get the dog hair off your wonderful suit. We're so glad to have the two-legged person who helps make our four-legged residents stay healthy. So welcome, Dr. Herzog. We at council, I would ask that you consider putting the resolution on the floor that we have in honor of our Dr. Herzog, and then we can see if he has any comments, and we can certainly share comments of our own as well. Is there a motion to adopt the certificate of recognition for service to Dr. Lawrence Herzog, our doctor of veterinary medicine? I think in honor of Dr. Herzog, I will actually read that for you all before asking for that motion in that second. The City of Grosse Pointe Park recognizes with respect and admiration the contribution of work you have made to our community and the animals of Grosse Pointe Park and surrounding communities. Whereas Dr. Herzog graduated from the Michigan State University, right, Dan?
That's right.
College of Veterinary Medicine in 1975. Whereas Dr. Herzog has been a resident of Grosse Pointe Park since 1983, along with his beautiful wife, Kathy, one of our librarians. Whereas Dr. Herzog served as a city veterinarian from 1982 until through 2023. Whereas his generous, selfless service and actions over the last 40 years have comforted and improved the lives of thousands of animals and their families. Whereas Dr. Herzog and the work done at the Grosse Pointe Animal Clinic has had a positive and everlasting impact on the quality of life for pets and pet owners for decades. Dr. Herzog can always be seen with an infectious smile. He's demonstrating that right now, saying kind words and telling stories about just about anything. I, as mayor, along with my colleagues here with the city council, do hereby set my hand and have caused the official seal of the city of Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan to be affixed this 8th day of January 2024, assuming this motion gets made, which I'm assuming it will, along with the second. Do we have a motion? Yes, moved by McMillan. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Gallagher. Is there any discussion? Mr. Herzog, would you like to make some comments, or Chief Bostock? Please come to the podium.
I thank everyone, Madam Mayor, everyone. It's been just a pleasure to work in Grosse Pointe Park. And for the record, I'm not retired. And it's when I sat and thought about the number of police chiefs I've gone through here. I started with Henry Coons, and then moved Dick Coretti, then Dave Hiller, a little bit. Dave Locke was a temporary chief for a few months. And then I've been through, Jim Bostic twice, Brian Gerald, and it's just been a wonderful experience. I'm very proud that my kids got to grow up around all the good officers and stuff. And so it's been just a pleasure to work with them. And I've had a lot of contact with the officers over the years, and just very impressed by their professionalism and what they do to increase, the overall quality of life in Grosse Pointe Park. And it's something, because I've worked with the other points, City of Detroit and stuff, the City of Warren, I've got to see what other cities have. And I'm very proud of Grosse Pointe Park. So I appreciate Jim, I appreciate this, and Mayor Hodges, I thank you very much. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Well, in thinking of you, Dr. Herzog, the word honor came to mind, and I looked it up in preparation for tonight, and it does perfectly align with you. It's a person of superior standing, one whose worth brings respect, and one who is respected and has much public esteem. I think that describes you well. And we very much appreciate the partnership over the years and your value of all of our residents, including our animal residents. And clearly this community values that part of our population very much. So to have you as our team and treating those animals respectfully when we run into a challenge as well has certainly been very important to the success of our community. And we appreciate all that you've done. And I invite my colleagues to add anything to that.
I'd like to add something.
Yes.
And not only is Dr. Herzog a great vet, but you've been a tremendous asset to the community, a good friend, and very generous with your time. And one fun fact that people don't know about Dr. Herzog is that he's one of the best fly fishermen I've ever seen.
As he should be, huh?
Yes.
Anybody else? All right. Well, with that, thank you so much, Dr. Herzog. That's the important part. Give him the goods.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, now we can vote no. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kohler.
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield.
Absolutely, yes.
Councilmember Weiner.
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan.
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you again to the Herzog family for being such an important part of our community. Chief, did you then want to go into Mr. Jensen's presentation, or would you like to set us up, or?
Ladies and gentlemen, council, residents, it's my pleasure to introduce Dan Jensen. Dan is the former chief of police in Grosse Pointe Farms, who loves retirement so much that he had to get back into it a little bit. And now he's the executive director of the new Grosse Pointe Harper Woods Foundation. So, without any other ado, Dan Jensen. Dan?
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Welcome, Mr. Jensen.
Well, good evening, Mayor, esteemed colleagues, members of the Grosse Pointe Park City Council. It's my pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Dan Jensen. I live on Kirby Road, Grosse Pointe Farms. I retired in December of 2021, after 44 years with the Grosse Pointe Farms Department of Public Safety, the last 15 which being the director. So I've gotten to know Jim quite well. Dr. Herzog, I've worked with him over 35 years. So not to keep it too long here, who we are. I was hired back in April of 2023 to be the executive director of the newly formed Grosse Pointe Public Safety Foundation, which also encompasses Harper Woods. The first thing I insisted on when we had discussions in the beginning was that Harper Woods name be attached to the Grosse Pointe / Harper Woods Public Safety Foundation, and it will be at some point. The paperwork was already filed for the 501c3, so we wanted it to get in there a little bit before we change it. Harper Woods understands. They're definitely one of our partners, all Grosse Pointes, and Harper Woods, we're partners in everything we do, mutual aid, automatic aid, investigative, everything we do with the fine officers. And we have the finest officers, and I mean all the points together. I've told everybody that would ever listen to me long enough on it that we all have our little competition, who's doing what equipment's got what. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, when the stuff hits the fan, I don't believe there's anybody better police-wise or fire-wise than the points in Harper Woods. So otherwise I would have stayed for 44 years, so it's been outstanding. So a little bit on the Public Safety Foundation. Who we are. Grosse Pointe Public Safety Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit formed in April of 2023. It is designed as a forum for collaboration among law enforcement in the 5 points in Harper Woods to maximize public safety through technology. Our mission: to enhance the capabilities of the Public Safety Department of each of the 5 Grosse Pointes in Harper Woods by ensuring the provision of first-class, cutting-edge law enforcement and security technology training with the goal of providing the highest standard of public safety achievable. Our vision is securing our communities with advanced technologies. That's what we're about, advanced technologies. Basically, we're law enforcement 3.0. We are not budget fillers. We are focused on recruitment and retention of law enforcement personnel, as well as the technology. Some of the projects, the recent project completed in September of this year, of 2023, was the first project undertaken by the foundation. Basically, we got together, I met with all the chiefs, and just prior to my hiring on, they had voiced a concern that what we're always looking for is what's going to be the biggest bang for the buck for everybody, all the points in Harper Woods. And the one thing we all had an issue with was the communication at Grosse Pointe South High School, because there was none, basically. The communication inside that building, our prep radios didn't even work. So when you drove by the high school and you saw kids in certain areas hanging out the windows of the school, that's because they couldn't get a cell service at all. It was terrible. The Wi-Fi was terrible. So we realized that the way we do active shooters or any emergency situation like that, everyone is coming. So if you get a call of an active shooter situation at South High School, everybody that's working the road in all 5 Grosse Pointes and Harper Woods immediately heads for the school. So to get there and then not have the communication once entering the building was just ridiculous. So we hired some electricians to go in. We knew it was going to be at least a repeater. About 3.5, 4 hours later, the group of electricians came out and they needed 2 repeaters and all new wiring. The walls are 2 feet thick in spots. That's why there was no Wi-Fi at all. So we figured it was going to be 50 to 60 grand to get the repeater up. The estimate we got after back and forth was approximately 230,000. So I called the committee member that hired me into here, and I gave Sean Cotton. I gave him the news, and he said, "Yeah, I got it." And I said, "But you got my message, or we got the funds?" He said, "No, we got the funds." So the day after school got out in June, the electricians began their task, and they finished about the second week of high school. It actually was up and running just before the school started, but there were a couple of bugs that needed to be worked out. So about 2 to 3 weeks after school started, the communications there is outstanding. So that was the most important thing we've done to date. The rooftop mounted drone program that you're seeing in Grosse Pointe City, that came from one of our executive board members too. And then what were the FLIR cameras, the infrared thermal imaging, some are mounted in patrol cars. We have 2 in the farms, one's in the fire truck, another one's in the patrol car. They're great for catching people hiding, especially in open areas. We've all leaned on each other for this. The drones, we've all leaned on each other for the drones. The drones are outstanding. The farms has 2 drones. One that we've lent, our officers go with it and caught people, I know in the park and in Grosse Pointe City. Now people are picking up on it and getting their own. They're outstanding in what they can do. We have a smaller drone that we can use in the hallways of school or in a big building, maybe the hospital, that we can, if we're looking for, if it's not an active shooter with shots fired, we can send this thing down hallways and get locations pretty fast. So our current project we're looking at right now are LPRs, license plate readers. They're put together by a company called Flock. Detroit has some right now, approximately 27. Luckily, they all happen to be on the east side of Detroit. So we've got them from end to end. They're outstanding. They have 27 now. They were just recently approved for $5 million of budget for more in Detroit. One of the police commissioners in Detroit, and I think it was Willie Burton. There's 2 gentlemen named Willie. I think it was Willie Burton, voted against it. He had some concerns about privacy issues, rules and regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So he voted it down, but it passed anyway. And 3 to 4 days after it passed, his brother was hit and killed by a motorist in Detroit that took off. 3 days after that, they caught him with an LPR camera in Ohio. So these are all wired together. So every city they've been introduced to, crime has gone down anywhere from 17% to 70%. And it's not just the prevention of crime. And the way it helps in prevention wise are when we catch these guys using these LPR cameras, they get put to jail or prison, wherever they may go, which we call it school. And they go to school and these prisoners talk and they say, you don't want to go to hypothetically Grosse Pointes because they got these dang cameras everywhere. So they go elsewhere. A perfect example, Detroit with the green light cameras. That started with, I think it was 17 cameras or something like that. There are several hundred now. What that did is it drove the shooters, the hardcore gangs and the shooters onto the freeway because there was no place they could get to that didn't have these cameras. So they started doing, that's why you saw shots fired go up, shootings on freeways go up. Michigan State Police just got a $5 million thing in their budget to put them on the freeway. Unfortunately, they're not going to go away. They just go away somewhere else. So that's why it's imperative we think that we get them in the points. They're a great tool to prevent and to recover. There's some success stories here. For time frame, I'm just going to go over, I told you the best one, the most local one. There's one in Cobb County, Georgia. Crime's down 20%, burglary 34%, robbery 67%. This is repeated wherever they are at. There's been very little, if any, and I've looked, kickback from any kind of groups against that because these take pictures of license plates. They have no idea who owns, they have who owns the cars and the registration, but they don't know if it's a black, white, Native American. They don't know. It just gives you the information on that plate. And the way it works is there's been an incident, or let's say a bank robbery. A witness says they saw him leaving it looked like a white van. The officer, the detective's probably inside, whoever's closest, they punch that into those and they hit those LPR cameras, license plate readers, and they hit it all the way across. It only takes seconds, and it automatically eliminates every vehicle but white vans. So you can scroll through, and I don't know how many are going to be in that 5-minute time frame, and pick up and try to get it that way. So I've met with the chiefs. We have locations from all the chiefs and Harper Woods chief on where we would like to place them if and when we get the funds to do so. And then we'll work on to the next project. But these things are outstanding. So with that, if there's any questions, that's what we've done. That's what we're looking to do. We have an active campaign going on to raise funds for it. And I'm really excited about it. My goal personally is I'd like to get these things up and installed with council approval, with the approval, obviously, of the chiefs who work with the councils, and get these installed by June 1st at the latest. Keep in mind that if and when, and it will happen, we get the money to do it, the chiefs will then get with their councils and form a uniform policy that all of us will follow. It will not change, I don't believe it will change any of the pursuit policies. That was a question I got asked before. Pursuit policies are so important. We don't chase for a whole lot now. So it won't change that. It might deviate under certain circumstances. You get a kidnapper or whatever, but then again, that's up to the chief and then through his command officers, whether they want to do a pursuit, but it will not change those policies. And it will be like our pursuit policies now are all pretty much the same. We've copied each other. That's the way these guys work. It's the best. So it's all uniform that way. So if there's any questions.
Questions for Mr. Jensen? Ms. Gallagher?
Yes, I have one. Thank you. Your upgrades in the schools for the repeaters, is this specific to law enforcement and their ability to communicate, or is this enhances the students' ability to communicate and get online? And because I know they have trouble in there. So is it for the students as well, their benefit, or is it just for specific to the law enforcement?
Both, because it's a Wi-Fi based system. So the students love it because it's, it makes your cell phone so much better. But we were worried about communication. Yeah, the students love it too.
Excellent.
The teachers, administration love it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Other questions?
Mr. Kohler?
Just a simple one for the public. Best way, I heard there's a campaign going on, a website. Do you have other information that's out there that you could just state in the public record for all of us here?
Sure. There's we have a website being created as we speak, and I hope to have that up and running in the next couple of weeks. We do have the web page that you can use now is GPP Safety Foundation.gov, I believe is what it is. Yeah, so you can contact that, or you can contact me. I have an office at 63 Kirchville, Suite 222 in Grosse Pointe Farms. So that's where some of the checks have come into.
You're working,
There you go. There you go. Yep, out of the way.
You're working collaboratively with the Grosse Pointe Park Foundation, Police Foundation, or is it a delineation between, or are you working in?
John Molsky, who's big in that foundation, is a good friend of mine. If his foundation is going to stay in existence, that's fine. The more you have, the merrier. We're here not to compete, but to assist with. So it doesn't matter to me or to the board if they already have a foundation, so we don't. That's not happening. All this is together as a team. So if Grosse Pointe City's foundation, they have one as well, or the Park Public Safety Foundation wants to continue, that's fine. We're with it. It's together. There's no competition on trying to raise funds for public safety. That's what we're doing.
Thanks.
Mr. Jensen, we're so grateful for the partnership, and I especially like that you put the emphasis on the enhancements to public, because taxpayers should be paying for the core services, right? So the fact that you're focused on those enhancements really enable us, that it's a competitive advantage, and partnerships matter. We can't get it done without great partnerships. And you're a major enabler, and it's very tangible, the result, and you're absolutely the right guy for the job. I read that you were one of 337 applicants when you were first hired as chief in the farm. So you're clearly the best at what you do. And I think I also read that you never had a sick day over 20 years. So clearly you're committed.
The last 20, I never had a sick day.
All right, so clearly you're
Just
committed,
works easy.
clearly you're passionate, and we're fortunate to have your leadership. And I'd also like to point out that a number of our residents, Grosse Pointe Parkers, are part of your team as well, serving in board roles. And I'd like to recognize them too. That would be Mr. C.H. Crane, Mr. Matt Evans, Mr. Doug Turnbull, Mr. Mike Shield, Mr. John Henson, and Mr. Jim Robson serve on your board of directors. So thank you to our residents.
And there's a few others, but yes, there's a board of directors that actually has 7 individuals. Majority do live in the park.
It's because we rock and roll here in the park. We're the best. Go ahead, you can say it.
No,
Camera off.
I'm retired now. I don't have to get into competition things. I do think that, a little smoke here, but that you have the right man for the job. And I pushed really hard a couple of years ago to have him get the job then. Nothing wrong with his predecessor. I just knew this man was for the job, and he was ready to go. So, and I can speak for all the other acting chiefs right now, because I worked with all of them, that we all felt the same way, so.
Well, we would
Got yourself
clearly
a great one
agree,
here.
and that's why we have the force here, because if you said anything else, you were going to be hauled off. But thank you very much for your leadership and for the partnership. And Chief, would you recommend that we bump up the item in our agenda that accepts the donation to now?
That would be great.
Just so Mr. Jensen can be here to that, or
This is part
the
of
step together?
Park,
Okay, yeah.
Foundation.
Park Foundation.
No, what, drivers? Why am I taking that?
But you're going to do the chief's report? Is that what's?
There's notes.
As long as
You want me to read it for you? These lawyers.
All right, Chief, I'll let you handle it how you see best fit. If you'd like to move into your report or bump up the other item, given the fact it's public safety themed. Thank you, Mr. Jensen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, we're gonna jump down to Public Safety Foundation.
You certainly can do that if we want to stick in the public safety thread. If so, I would need a motion from the floor in order to make that amendment to the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Wiener. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Caulfield to move the new business item number 1, the Grosse Pointe Park Public Safety Foundation donation to now, so as to be thematically tied. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kohler,
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Wiener,
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan,
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. That item has been moved up. Mr. Bostic, would you like to lead us in that discussion?
Thank you, Council. So just to clarify a little bit what Chief Jensen was talking about as far as the different foundations, the Grosse Pointe Park Public Safety Foundation is specific to Grosse Pointe Park. And their mission is to supplement and to supplant budget items in the ways of equipment needs that we have that we may not be able to budget, whereas the Grosse Pointe Foundation that Chief Jensen has talked about is going to focus on technology for all of the Grosse Pointes. So the Grosse Pointe Park Public Safety Foundation has generously donated $25,794. Donation is for the purchase of an unmanned aerial vehicle or drone and startup equipment software, thus creating a drone unit within the Department of Public Safety. The benefits of having a drone: large area search and rescue, search for missing persons, endangered children, and vulnerable adults. As thermal imaging for searching at night. We're able to monitor fire incidents for hotspots or trapped victims. Investigate motor vehicle accidents, crime scene mapping, can be used in our Special Weapons and Tactics Units or SRT, and tracking suspects and vehicles wanted in crimes. Our officers will be trained and licensed as drone pilots. Currently, our Public Safety Department has 2 drone eligible pilots. Donation of the $25,794 offsets all the costs for the creation of the drone unit. Starting next fiscal year, the annual cost for maintenance, software, and software upgrades, including insurance, will approximately be $5,600. So with that, I ask that council recognizing the donation from the foundation, and we allow Finance Director Moriarty to allocate the funds to the appropriate budget line item for public safety to purchase that drone equipment.
Make a motion.
Say the motion made by McMillan. Is there a second?
Excellent. Yep.
Gallagher, the motion, just to be clear, is to adopt the resolution contained in our packet, which acknowledges and accepts the donation of $25,795 from the Grosse Pointe Park Public Safety Foundation to support the cost of creating a drone unit and to authorize Finance Director Moriarty to allocate said funds to appropriate budget line item. Is there any discussion, council members?
Councilmember Weiner.
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan. Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries, and Chief, please extend our gratitude to the foundation for being yet another wonderful partner in protecting our people, their property, and our tax base. You may continue with your report, please.
Since we're moving one up, can I ask that we move the last public safety item up?
The fire apparatus bay doors. Sure.
So
Is
moved.
moved by Wiener. Second. Seconded by Gallagher to move item number 2 under new business, purchase of fire apparatus bay doors, up to item 6, the manager's report, public safety report. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kohler.
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Weiner.
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan.
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, I realize what he just did. You get to be home in time for kickoff.
Oh,
now.
man, no
Don't
way.
Is there something on TV there?
Smooth move. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, council, for your consideration. Earlier this year, Public Safety replaced 5 of the 8 apparatus garage doors at a cost of $47,900. The doors were the original doors when the garage was built in 1993 and were beyond further repair. Money was budgeted to begin replacing the doors this fiscal year with the intention of finishing the project in fiscal year 25. Public Safety Department recently had a 2021 Ford Explorer Ford Police Interceptor bought back by the Ford Motor Company for $31,000 and $170. Citywide Door provided updated quote to replace and install the final 3 doors on the apparatus garage for $29,300. The financial impact would be 0. Recommendation is to allocate the $29,300 from the buyback of the Ford Explorer to the appropriate public safety budget line item and replace the garage doors this fiscal year.
Thank you, Chief, for reading that motion. I will not reread it. Counselors, is there a motion moved by Wiener? Is there a second? Seconded by Gallagher. Is there any discussion? Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kohler.
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Weiner.
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan.
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. We have new fire apparatus bay doors. Thank you, Chief, for leading that.
I would like to take a moment and update where we stand with our investigations into the armed robbery and the attempted armed robbery that occurred last month. First, I'd like to recognize the hard work of your public safety department. When incidents like this occur, we are the action plan. Public safety is the action plan, and it becomes an all hands on deck situation. The Detective Bureau is working all the angles, and patrol have stepped up. They're assigned extra patrols, plainclothes and marked in the business districts, all while working with our partners on the local level, the state, local, and the federal level. To date, we have identified 4 suspects. This is where it gets tricky. They are all juveniles. 2 of them have already been interviewed and been released to their parents' custody. 3 of the suspects' parents are aware of the investigation, and so far everybody's been cooperative. So where we stand is currently we're waiting on the results of some search warrants that we have going forward. Currently, we have 7 out there. We're waiting for those results, and our plan is to build a solid case to present to the Wayne County prosecutor. I don't have any timetable of when that's going to happen, but it's going to be sooner than later. It's a unique situation because this involves juveniles instead of adults. With that, I can take, we want to make sure that we get this right, and we have one shot at this, and with this cooperation right now, we feel that time is on our side. So I just wanted to reiterate to council and reiterate to the business owners and residents that we are on top of it. We are safe. Sometimes things don't happen as quickly as we want, but there is a process, and we're doing the best that we can with what we have. Our resources, our help has been outstanding, everywhere from the FBI to the state and at the local levels. Everybody wants to help, and so we really have some great support. So if anybody has any questions, I'll ask them to the limited ability that I can investigate.
Well, we thank you for that, Chief. We know that it's a hard, delicate balance to maintain, right? We want the community to know it's in good hands, and clearly it is with you and your team at the helm, but there's also only so much that can be said, so it's not to compromise any investigations in that. So thank you for at least giving us the confidence that we are exactly that, in good hands, and that things are trending in the right direction, and that the immediate threat has been abated for the most part, so folks can safely be part of our community. So thank you for that. And hopefully we've sent a strong message that crime's not allowed here. Are there questions for the chief regarding this matter, or Mr. McMillan? I don't know if you have anything
No
to
questions,
add.
just a comment. I think you're doing a great job. I even heard that you were out on the street yourself, patrolling. So thank you very much for all
On
your hard
Christmas
work.
Eve and Christmas Day, just to be.
Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So that's the dedication that we have in the park from our leadership. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Anything?
Sorry.
Ms. Gallagher, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I was just reading through some statistics. We had talked last time you were here, and you talked about an increase of over 100% in terms of the number of stolen cars. Have you got an overall year-to-year end and in terms of numbers from last year to this year?
We are compiling the numbers for the annual report, and the numbers are not as inflated as I brought to council as last month. And I'll be able to explain why.
So you anticipate less than 100% increase in stolen cars?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I noticed, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question as it pertains to the budget, but it does pertain to your budget. And looking through the financial documents, I see that we have almost $2 million that had been allocated for the budget for the police department that are not spent. That's on page 4.1, if I'm reading it incorrect, if I'm reading that number correctly. I'm just wondering if you have any insight as to
Are you
the
talking about the
allocated,
current budget, ma'am?
the audited budget that just went through on page 4.1 of that audit. We see that it's actually $1.988 million that were allocated for the budget but were not spent. And I'm just wondering if you have any insight into that.
Off the top of my head, I could not tell.
Okay.
Councilmember Gallagher, that'd be a good question when we get to the audit, if you want to ask Mrs. Barnes that question.
I think it's also important to point out that we did meet together as a group, Chief, along with our Chair of Public Safety, McMillan, and Mr. Seisland recently to discuss next steps. I don't know if you want to outline any of that, Mr. McMillan, but that group is scheduled to meet again actually the committee's scheduled to meet on January 31st.
I sent a note out to the committee, and that's the date we're targeting, January 31st.
Right, so the essence of the preliminary meeting was to really set the stage to make sure we're all working in collaboration, and our public safety team knows it does not stand alone on this, and that we are all working in partnerships. That meeting will happen on January 31st. We requested, just so that the community is aware of our team, an outcome of that meeting would be to come back to this council with some recommendations regarding funding strategies, because we know we have a safe community, but we also know that the bar of quality is higher here in Grosse Pointe Park, and that we need to figure out how to fund those solutions. So that will be one of the outcomes of that meeting. And just to prepare the community, there are many options that can help fill that need, whether it's a millage, whether it's working on our tax base and continuing to grow that, or special assessments, formation of authorities, consolidations, TIFA and DDA participation. So these are all things that are going to make sure that we're ardently at the table and providing our public safety team with the resources it needs. So that will be item one that will come out of that committee under Mr. McMillan's leadership and in partnership with Chief Bostock. And then secondly, we all know it's not just dollars that solve the problem, it's management solutions as well. So what of those will be coming back to the table, and how do we need to support them? We've already seen great evidence of what that could look like tonight through the use of technology. So thank you to those partnerships for making that happen. So those are the big things that we're looking forward to seeing come out of that meeting, along with the timeline, so that we as a council know what action is expected of us to make any of those measures reality. So thank you to Mr. McMillan. You were on top of this right away, and making sure that that meeting occurred, and so that we would be prepared to have a report for the community tonight, and along with the leadership of our award-winning chief and team, really make sure we have our arms around this issue and we're protecting our people and our property. I'd like to make a comment. Yes, Ms. Gallagher.
Thank you. And it is Councilwoman Gallagher or Councilmember Gallagher. As a formal titles are required per the rules. I would appreciate it. I've earned the title. Thank you. I would also like to say that I have been put on, I know Max, you like to smile about that, but it's okay. I have been.
Wouldn't that be Councilmember Weiner?
It's funny, isn't it?
It is.
It's hysterical. As a member of the Public Safety Committee, I would have expected an invitation to that meeting. I have not received an invitation to the meeting on the 31st either. And the only person that has reached out to me to have any conversation is Chief Bostock, which I appreciate. And we are working through the calendar to have those discussions. So for full committee, it would be appropriate to have all members.
It was not a committee meeting that occurred, but you will, that was all this happened late last week. So you will get a notification for that meeting.
Yes, in fact, it was sent today, so maybe you didn't get a chance to look at your email.
I was in my email all day, so I didn't see it come in today. But I look forward to seeing that invite to be participating in that committee.
Yeah, and I know this is going to be asked later about the economy, and auditor can't but not speak up, but one of the notes, we read the management discussion analysis section. It talks about the overall, and this will be a question here for you, Chief, in just a second. The reduction in expenditures, the net expenditure reductions are the direct results primarily of unfilled staff reductions due to retirements and attrition, which is going to lead my question up. Do you want to talk about, I know there was a posting out there we had for a backfill position right there, just the progress on that, what that looks like here, maybe this current calendar year, you're planning for that.
Well, currently, with the way things stand, our capacity is 28, and that's what we're at right currently. We're at 28. Whether somebody retires, nobody's told me that they're going to retire. I have a couple that are eligible to retire that are of age that can. So I do have a number of applicants that are in the pipeline, if you will. So we don't get caught, flat-footed, and if we do have to fill the position or backfill, we have started backgrounds and work on some candidates. Doesn't mean that they're going to be there if and when that position opens up, because we are competing with all of the other departments around here. So it seems like a never-ending cycle, which I'm finding out. You get an applicant and you touch base with them a couple of weeks later, and they say, "Oh well, I just took a job at Sterling Heights or Warren or whatever." So, but we're trying to keep the pipeline. at least, something in play.
No, that's great. And obviously, what you're going forward with the FBI Academy and what we also do through our continuing education training with all of our officers, I think it sets a great example and a foundation for folks to choose us over nothing against Sterling Heights or the Warrens, right? But we want to remain competitive in that. I know you do a great job with that, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poland. Other questions for our chief? All right, thank you very much. You just kickoff. Next item on our agenda, moving into unfinished business, beginning with our approval of council rules and conduct. I believe Mr. Seisling, thank you, Mr. Jensen. Thank you, Mr. Herzog.
A correction, sir. That email is GEPSafetyFoundation@gmail.com.
At Gmail?
Gmail.
That's the email, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you guys.
All right, so with that, Mr. Seisland, I believe it's you that's going to lead us through this discussion.
Yes, I'd ask too if council to consider making a motion, then I can get into it.
Yes, certainly.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Wiener, seconded by McMillan to adopt the council rules and code of conduct as presented.
Yes, so thank you, Mayor Hodges, members of council, and particularly Councilmember Gallagher, who brought it up in our last meeting that there were some concerns of material that looked like it had to be missing. And so what I did is I took a compilation of everyone that has been introduced with the City of Grosse Pointe Park. So originally, we had in July 2020, the City Council adopted a rules and code of conduct during the meeting. That was adopted through several amendments with the council, and I have that as Exhibit A in here. After the November 2021 council, which included Councilmember Gallagher, Wiener, Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield, and Mayor Hodges, that council adopted a new set of council rules there. And then as part of a new council, we had Councilmember Drever and Councilmember Kolar come along in November 2022. So I proposed a new set of council rules and conduct in that December 11th, 2023 meeting. I will be the first to admit, I did make several mistakes, and I want to highlight those. Number one, that, I did not highlight where there was, I call them immaterial changes. So punctual, commas, the council member, breaking those up or adding to. And, so there was some confusion there. I can totally understand Mrs. Gallagher if there was some confusion, totally understand with that. And the only material change that I did miss was there's a portion within the consent agenda of being able to add items later if need be. So that could be the case of, let's say we had a Mr. Jensen or somebody that needs to present, we want to be able to add to the consent agenda to move, get that forward. That was my suggestion there. Councilmember Gallagher, I really appreciate, we brought it up at the last meeting, to talk about it so we can take a look here. I do really believe the version you showed me at the last meeting was the July 2020 version. And the only reason I bring that up is you had a comment regarding that it looks like I removed the 5 business days for council agenda items. That was actually approved by you and the other council members in the January 10th, 2022 meeting. And then you also had a comment, I believe, regarding, I think it was social media, talking with residents. There was like inflamed, that's kind of how I had it. That was also approved by you and city council at that time. And so the one thing I did look at and we were talking about is on the online version. So if you go on the city council right now, city council website, your picture, everybody's picture on there, that has the council rules and code of conduct. In there, in that January 2022 meeting, the only amendment that was made by the Gallagher Wiener council was adding street to public comments. That was voted on by Marty and yourself. That did not get put in there. It was in the minutes that it was voted and adopted by you and other members of council, but truly that was a mistake that when we were putting it online, somehow that did not get added in there. And so I'd be happy if there's any other questions or comments. This was nothing at all to I just wanted to be able to highlight those things that were material changes, the commas and the punctual. Moving forward to make it easier on everybody in council, I will ensure to redline that. And that's something that I'll say. I appreciate it.
Other discussion? Mr.
Yes.
Fuller?
Thank you. So it just simply stated here, so thank you for that, Nick, or City Manager Seidlin. So everything's here that we're seeing here, and I appreciate this memo here. That's everything we discussed last week, going back and looked at our meeting. I think it's everything here.
Yeah.
I know Councilmember Draver would not be happy if we didn't have the mayor and city attorney move, but that's here, so we're good. So shout out Brent, that's on there. I'm sure he's not watching. He's probably, sleeping. That's right, Mayor. He's sleeping right now as a Michigan alumni. He is sleeping right there. But so we're good now. This is everything right there, and I appreciate your commitment to that. So just wanted to acknowledge that from you there. Thank you.
Well, to piggyback on that, Mr. Kohler, I did hear from Mr. Drever as well, just wanting to make sure that page 22, he's mentioning 2 pages here. Sorry, I should have read this beforehand, but just wanted to make sure that the wording there was grammatically correct. He had some concerns it might not be, and he's proposing the verbiage as incoming mail shall not be opened by anyone except the intended recipient when addressed to individual council member or staff. So I can get that to you
Send it to
later,
me.
Mr. Seisland, but at least for the discussion today to make sure that correction and edit is clear. Councilmember Gallagher?
Thank you. I've prepared some documents for everyone to take a look at here so that we can reference exactly what it is. But I don't know if you want to pass them down, that'd be great. Okay.
Does the city attorney and city manager get one?
I do not, I just need,
Okay, yeah, I'll share.
We'll share.
I just need 6 copies for the council members. Okay, so here is Exhibit A, which you shared with us. Exhibit A is from the council, before us.
2 councils.
2 councils before us. And according to the rules that we have instated, rules becomes irrelevant when we have the rules voted in. So the reference to these, I'm not sure what the point is, but they're in the paperwork, but they're irrelevant as we have had additional rules brought onto it.
Mm-hmm.
You have Exhibit B,
Mm-hmm.
which I think you referenced as
You and council adopted.
the council adopted.
Yep.
Okay, and council Exhibit C is what you're asking us to adopt now with the
Yes.
changes.
With all the
single changes announced, every single one of them.
Every grammatical, yep.
Okay, so I took your council Exhibit C
Okay,
and I compared it to the hard copy that I have from
okay.
2022,
2020, okay,
which is the last council that was adopted with
okay.
myself and council member Wiener and Mayor Hodges and
Okay.
council member Caulfield. If you open that up and you look at page 7, it contains the changes that we made that recommends the street name, which was council member McMillan's request. So there is a copy of a document that has those changes in it.
They'll state their name and street, it says,
Just
correct?
state their name and street.
Yep,
That's right.
That was in the July 2020 version, and then it was taken out. And then you guys added, you, me, Councilmember Gallagher, Mayor Pro Tem, voted back in.
This is from the document from January 2022. This is the document from 2022 that was voted on by our board.
Can you
And
tell me
in
the
it-
page numbers you have on there, the top sheet for me?
5,
15?
7, yes.
That is the July 2020 version you have in your hand. That is not the January 2022.
This, you're suggesting that this is from July 2020,
Yes.
What?
If that's,
2020 what?
if that July of 2020, if that's the same version that you sent me an email of, that is the adopted July 2020 version.
I don't know why I would have a hard copy from signature from a document.
Because the former city attorney, Jake Howland, gave you a copy when you were a new council member. When you were a brand new council member, as he did with Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield, Councilmember Wiener and such, just as part of a packet of new information for you and council. You received that version. That is correct. You would have received that first version. It wasn't until, so you were elected in November 21. In January of 22, you approved a new version with red line changes.
So in that version that you're suggesting,
Yes.
that version in it says, that has nowhere in it that says that a second, that if you're suggesting that that's the case, then nowhere in that document would there be the ability for a council member to make a motion and have it be seconded and then put on the council agenda.
I see your point with that. There was in the July 2020 version, I believe you're correct. There was some language in there that council members prior to a council meeting, like you said, yourself and Councilmember Millen, you want to add something, then there was a process that you could go on an agenda item. That was then voted on by yourself and other council members to remove that.
No.
However, yes, it was. However, if you elected to today procedurally, if you made a motion and another council member made a motion regarding a topic, absolutely, that would get added on to the next agenda item, and that would happen. The document itself, it's a guideline. There is some things that I do appreciate, you had some concerns regarding social media use and First Amendment rights. You really are. If you don't want to necessarily follow them because of those concerns, I respect your decision and completely understand.
Okay, please understand that
Sure,
if what you're saying is that the document from 2020 did not, you're suggesting that that document did not contain the opportunity for a council member to make a motion, have it be seconded and put on the agenda. Those were not part of the rules according to what you're saying. And if that was the case, the motion for the Trombley agenda, the Trombley motion, which was seconded and put on the agenda, would not have happened if we were following the rules. And they were in the rules and we were able to do it. Actually, there was also a motion made by me, which was seconded by Brenner in 2021 to have the requirements for donations to be discussed on the agenda, to have them be removed and to have it put on the agenda. So it was on more than one occasion that this board made a motion, had it seconded by and voted, and it was to be put on the agenda. You're suggesting that those rules don't exist in this document, but they do. And if they do.
The July 2020 version, they do. In January 2022, you and City Council voted to remove that provision of the rules.
If we did remove that provision from the rules, then explain to me how I made a motion for Trombley. It was seconded and voted and then put on the agenda.
Because you suggested it at the meeting.
It was, if you're suggesting that it's not part of the rules, how did we follow those rules to get it on the agenda?
You can do that as part of procedure
At a meeting.
at a meeting.
At a meeting, you can add it.
You can.
Not according to the rules.
Mr. Wiener?
The motion on the floor is this language. So again, we're getting into the weeds here. The motion on the floor is this
I'm
language.
sorry, one moment.
Councilmember Gallagher?
The question is, do we have an issue with the language that is in this document right now?
Yes.
Okay? So again, I'm fine with this language here. So why don't we focus on the language here that you have an issue with? And then let's move forward. We've got a lot to do today and we're kind of splitting hairs. This is the language. This is the motion. Why don't we focus on this?
According to the rules that are in place, I have not yielded the floor. And until I yield the floor, the interruption that's coming from another council member is not appropriate. And I would ask the chair to recognize that.
Councilmember Gallagher, we're pursuing an efficient discussion. So, and I think Mr. Wiener's correct in that we do have a document in front of us that we've been asked to consider. So if there's something specific to that document, we would ask that you would contain your comments to that.
Okay. And my findings are that this document that you're actually basing off of is not from 2022. And that comment I would like in the minutes.
Yeah, I said July 2020.
January of 2022. And to insinuate that by the simple fact that we made a motion and had a seconded, and it was part of the rules. And if we go back to I could probably find it, and I probably will go back. And there was language that Mayor Hodges made when I made the motion to have the requirement for donations to be filling out all kinds of paperwork. And she said, yes, that's the appropriate process. If it's seconded, it can be added to the agenda. She verbally said it. I'll find it and I'll bring it to the attention of this board just to confirm. Okay, so when you look at Exhibit C, which you want to provide to us, and you highlight all the changes that were made, you can see set the agenda page 5 and 6. And I'll read from here. An agenda serves as a guide for conducting an official business meeting of the city council or other duties or other duly constituted body. This person responsible for setting this agenda is the mayor in consultation with the city manager. City council members can request to have an item added to the city council meeting agenda at least 7 days in advance of a scheduled meeting by contacting the mayor with an email. The language that has been added in Exhibit C is the request will be reviewed and considered by the mayor and city manager for why the request is being made. This is not in the rules as it has been in the past. That has not been in the past in the rules. This has been added, it's not highlighted. The topic of discussion must have background documentation submitted to the mayor and city council for why the request is being made. Being mindful. Now, this sentence that completes this has been spliced from another paragraph. And it says the city manager and the city attorney will need time to research the pros and cons and provide any legal opinion, as well as, and this sentence was also spliced in, as well as allowing the public in attendance for that agenda item for those who chose to listen and participate, which actually doesn't make any sense in the sentence as it reads, because it was spliced from another paragraph and put in. What was removed was proposed meeting agenda will be sent to the council 5 business days in advance for review and comment. I went back and looked at every packet that we received over the last 2 years, and we would receive a packet on Monday. It would be the consent agenda, and then we would receive our agenda on Friday with the full agenda, right? Mm-hmm. Over the last few days, we haven't received our consent agenda on Monday. It just doesn't come. Over the past few meetings, it just hasn't come. It does go on to say the meeting agenda and all supporting documentations will be made available to the council and published online in advance, and emergency items can be added. As every council meeting, the city council will set the agenda, the regular agenda, at the beginning of the meeting after the consent agenda has been voted on. What has been removed and not highlighted in Exhibit C is at the time the council members can request that a topic of discussion be added to the agenda, and if it gets a second and approved by a majority of the council, that agenda item will be added to the next council. By placing the approved added agenda item to the next meeting, the city manager can research the pros and cons and required legal opinion. The other splice sentence was, as well as allowing the public to be in attendance for that agenda item for those that wish to choose to listen and participate during the public agenda. That makes sense in that sentence. It doesn't make sense in the paragraph before. What is happening with these edits, it is you have removed, without highlighting it in red once again, that 5 business days for council to review agenda items, to present questions and get timely answers. As happened this week, we received our agenda items on Thursday, right? We didn't receive them on Monday. And it does say business days. It says 5 business days. Basically creating a Friday to Monday review for council voting in this, in how it's written here. And these items, include items such as, this would include items such as increased tax proposals, parking lots, rules of engagement, conduct, etc. We would receive it on Friday, have to vote on it on Monday. You also remove the council's ability to request topic topics to be added to the agenda with a second and a vote. In essence, no ability for council to add items unless approved by the mayor and the city manager. Thirdly, the added condition language empowering the mayor, the city manager, and the city attorney in deciding worthiness of agenda items while removing council authority to add them with a motion vote. This language, I will not accept. I will not vote for. I think that having the ability for this board to add items to an agenda is appropriate and proper. And I think what those folks who voted for these people on this council expect them to have. Now, you can look consent agenda, page 6. It reads, the consent agenda will be added 5 business days before the scheduled meeting where the consent agenda will be used. Right? You've added, items may be added later if necessary to the consent agenda.
I did admit that that was not highlighted.
And it is not highlighted.
That would be
That is a very important piece of information, which will limit the ability of this council to make comments to the consent agenda, as the consent agenda is a topic for no one to have discussion or vote.
I think it's also very important to highlight the previous things you mentioned you voted for in January of 2022, the changes of removing the proposed meeting agenda of 5 business days in advance for review and comments. You approved and added the prior paragraph before. Yes, you did. You were a unanimous vote. The request will be reviewed and considered by the mayor and city manager regarding the meeting.
I made a motion.
The other paragraph, by placing the approved added agenda into the meeting, the manager and attorney can research the pros and cons. You also approved that subtraction. So I think in fairness, absolutely, I'll be the first to admit when I said that I did not add this item, it did not highlight that. Absolutely, that is my mistake. But at the same time, Councilmember Gallagher, the things you suggest for, which again, I understand where you're coming from, but you did vote for these changes.
How do you explain that I made a motion for Trombley, it was seconded and put on the agenda?
That's not because
It's process. It's process. It's process. And if you really want to follow process here, it says here that they're changing the language for this.
Wait, which part are we on?
We can go to general provisions,
Okay.
right? Paragraph 3, change language. These rules will be placed on the agenda the first meeting. It's supposed to be the first meeting in December, but it was changed to January. That's not highlighted either. And of the council following the seated of the newly elected council members for review. A copy of the rules shall be distributed to each council member. The council may alter and amend the rules at any time by a vote of the majority of its member after notice has been given of the proposed alterations in the agenda. Now, we have so many here. We do not have a clean copy of our rules as they exist and every rule that every of those rows and languages that you would like to change. And in order for this body
They're
to,
on the packet.
excuse me?
They're in the packet right now. Exhibit C is every single change that was highlighted, including the grammatical errors in the December packet you received. So in December, I only had the material changes, where then I did admit I did not highlight on accident the items may be later added if necessary in all grammatical changes. That's why I wanted to do Exhibit C, make sure everything so it's out there. And so that we have this.
Let me ask
And I
you a
just,
question.
no, absolutely, but I just have one last thing. And so I wanted to bring this forward. You know, we got a new council, you know, Councilmember Kolar, Councilmember Drever might have had some more questions too, you know, get ahead of it. And so, yes, it was presented in December and now we're looking at it in January. But yes,
I'm gonna
I'm
ask
ready.
you a question.
Sure.
We voted on rules in January of 2022.
2022. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Marty, what was the change that you asked to be made in that January 2022? What did you ask to be done?
I believe it was
Councilmember.
the street.
The street name.
The street, yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't in there before, correct?
Correct.
So I have a copy in here and it has the street name now added to it. And it has our rules and all of our rules.
It's my job to keep these meetings moving forward. So, Councilmember Gallagher, if you can have another
Otherwise-
opportunity to be heard. I do see that Mr. Wiener would like to be heard.
Please. So it's a living document. Clearly, every year we go through it, we vote on it. And stress this all the time. Like you make it sound like this is a weekend job, the weekend before the meeting. If you have incremental changes, and no one's perfect. If there are changes you want to make them, document them, write them down, have some structure. I mean, I know that I'm in contact with the city, with the DPW, with all the different departments throughout the month. A more constructive way, let's get this into writing, the changes that you have, and then let's get it to the team, and then we can actually flesh it out as opposed to just kind of springing it in a meeting. This is not the most constructive place in the meeting to make minute clerical changes. But anyway, once again, the motion on the table is these changes here. We can always go back to the document again. But like, can we vote on this now? I mean, is there, Councilmember Kohler?
Do we have a motion? Mr. Chairman.
We do. Get a motion for next, city manager size and start.
A motion.
And supported by McMillan.
Thank you, clerk. Is there any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Kohler?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Wiener here in the sense where there's an approach to make these changes. Since we are here tonight, even though it's not the best approach, I'm looking to you, Mayor, and you, City Attorney. If we wanted to look at some of these items that are here that Councilmember Gallagher has brought to our attention, is it possible to make another motion to add some of these changes into this current living documents on the table? Can we do that?
Yeah, the motions that are in the memo?
Right. Yeah, thank you.
No, those are not the motions in the memo.
One moment.
I think what
What
Mr.
changes are you?
Well, I'm not proposing, I'm just answering the question, and I'm confident I know the answer, but I just wanted, if we wanted to go through line by line and add not necessarily everything that's in here, but of course, things that are in here that Councilmember Gallagher or whoever makes a motion, that is certainly within the rights.
Saying hypothetically, if
Yes.
we wanted to amend the motion to include any edits, can we do that?
Can we do
The
that?
answer is yes.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that was stated for the public. Thank you.
Mr. Caulfield?
I think when we look at these and you look at rules, the intent of this was a couple of things, and I'm assuming because I was not on the 2020 first council that brought this forward, but I think the intent was to provide more communication and transparency to our residents on what is going to be on the documents and what is going to be for the meetings coming up. That's why the dates were added. My question is, this is a guideline. And I'm going to ask you as the attorney, prior to 2020, it sounds like no one could add anything. I mean, it's like anyone can add an agenda item. This is simply a guideline of suggestions that we all kind of come together to say, let's just follow these rules so that we can openly communicate what's going to be on the agenda for people to come in and make public comments. If you want to add something last minute, we can add something, correct? Exactly. So I'm going to say Exhibit C is on here. We have a motion to vote on it. If you don't agree with the code of conduct, vote no on it. And then bring proposed changes. This is a fluid document.
I have bringing proposed changes and I am trying to make them and I keep getting interrupted. I have not yielded the floor and I still have comments to say. You may not like it, but that's the way it is. And what I don't like.
Call the question.
Okay.
Call the question.
So the question's been called?
Yes.
We need a second for that, City Attorney?
Yeah.
Is there a second to the question that's been called by Wiener?
I'll second.
Seconded by McMillan. Do we have to afford discussion to that or do we go right to a vote?
Go right to a vote. This is to call the question.
And the question is approval of the council rule, the code of conduct and council rules as presented in the document.
You're going to actually have two motions. The first motion would be to call the question, and then you'll come back and adopt it if the question without discussion is called.
Okay.
Yeah.
So clerk, can you please call the roll on the question?
Councilmember Kohler.
No.
Councilmember Gallagher.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilmember,
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan.
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. The question has been called. Now we move to the action item of the motion that was on the floor, correct?
Right.
And we can have discussion?
No.
No, okay. Clerk, can you please call that roll?
Exhibit C now.
To approve exhibit C.
So we're approving the council rules and code of conduct as presented in the packet with the 3 edits that are noted regarding citizens' participation, incoming mail, and general provisions as provided for in the memorandum.
Okay. And I think just to be clear, you're adding the proposed new language from that memo.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
Clerk?
Councilmember Kohler,
No.
Councilmember Gallagher,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Weiner,
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan,
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. We have a new code. Thank you all for that discussion. As we pointed out, we can always make edits at a later date in a more productive fashion so that we can get those discussions. Yes, Councilmember Gallagher?
Point of personal privilege.
Is an appropriate use of that?
Yes.
The language that you suggested is a more appropriate way. I am offended by that, and I, as a point of personal privilege, expect an explanation or an apology.
Thank you, Councilmember Gallagher. I'm just doing my best to move the meeting forward. No disrespect to you whatsoever. But thank you for that.
So the apology will come?
I don't have anything to apologize for. Moving forward in the agenda, we now have our city attorney contract in front of us. Mr. McMillan, I will turn it over to you once we get the motion on the table. The recommended motion is to approve the contract between the City of Grosse Pointe Park and the Kelly firm for an annual retainer of $115,000, comprehensive of both prosecution and general legal services. It would also be retroactive to November 1st. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by McMillan, seconded by Weiner. Mr. McMillan, you have the floor as chair of the Personnel
Okay,
Committee.
we met with the Kelly firm, with Dan Kelly, on the 20th of December. We reviewed the contract. We had a very good discussion of the pros and cons. We expressed some of our concerns with Mr. Kelly, and then we wrapped it up and we got back to him and we redrew it, and you see it right there in front of you. Max, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, the biggest numerical change here is that contract is not 115 from 120. Again, City Attorney Kelly laid out the case as to the increases, but again, was understanding of our position and said, I think we came to a good consensus which benefits the city. That's it.
Great. Other discussion? Great. Clerk, can you please call the roll on the motion to approve our city attorney's contract?
Councilmember Kohler,
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher. Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Weiner,
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan,
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, City Attorney Kelly, for your service. I think it's obviously one of our core services. And we, now that we've got a year under our belts, the effectiveness is going to improve even more. And we really appreciate the partnership and the relationship that we're building. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I know
Thank you all.
it's a real value that we're getting from you. I believe you said we're your only client on retainer,
Yeah.
which means it's code for Dan Kelly loses money. So thank you for your investment in our community and leadership that you provided us. Next item on the agenda is our Beautification Commission appointments. Council, the recommended motion for your consideration is to approve reappointment to the Beautification Commission for the following individuals for terms ending in 2027. That would include Ms. Ann Bilyeu, Ms. Cheryl Goss, Mr. Nicholas Woj, and Ms. Armin Julian. Secondly, a new appointment to complete a term expiring in 2025. With your approval would be granted to Kelly Kaminsky, also known as Momcat Kelly, and leader of our Monarch Pledge and 1,000 hours outside. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
By Kohler, seconded by Weiner. Any discussion? Clerk, can you please call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you for having me. Thank you for that. And obviously Councilmember McMillan and I don't always wear our ties. Sometimes we actually are out working with our Beautification Commission. Is that not right, Councilmember McMillan? And these individuals, for the public, if you have not had a chance, they are exceptional people. I encourage you, there are plenty of volunteer opportunities. There is no shortage of need for volunteers in the community. We heard a public comment tonight talk about the need to continue to beautify our wonderful community. And thank you to all those who have volunteered who are reappointed. Congrats to Kelly, who we all know who she is, and she's lovely and does great things for us. So I'm excited about these appointments and the reappointments here. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, my colleagues, and thank you to the public here for supporting our Beautification Commission.
Ditto, thank you.
Clerk. Councilmember Kohler.
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Weiner.
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan.
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. Congratulations, or more importantly, as Mr. Kohler so eloquently said, thank you to those, gratitude for those who have served or choosing to serve. Next item on our agenda is the fiscal year. The agenda actually says 23-24, but I believe it should say 22-23. So again, to be clear, fiscal year 22-23 audit presentation as part of our charter obligations. We are bringing this presentation this evening to our council and to our community. And I invite our finance director, Ginger Moriarty, and our auditor, Yo and Yo, Miss Allie Barnes, to the podium. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me to present. Excited to be here. Really enjoyed working with your team. I'm the audit principal on your engagement, so spent a lot of time here on site in meetings, working through things, and hope to continue a good partnership with all the finance team. Before I get started, I do want to work and assistance during the audit. Coming in as we did in the fiscal year is very challenging. It is a lot to wrap your head around and figure out how to get done by the end of the fiscal year. Things don't always happen perfectly, but her and the team she's working with, they really did the best job that they possibly could. And I really appreciate all her assistance throughout the process. So I like to make that very well known up front because we do have some challenging things to talk about. So usually I would come to you with a PowerPoint, but this year felt a little bit different to me and the results felt a little different to me. So I thought we would go about this in a more unusual format maybe for this type of presentation. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start with the report that says single audit on the front. And we're going to talk high level about the three findings because some of the findings I want to talk about and then show you in the financial statement at the same time. And then we will go to talk about the financial statement. So the single audit report essentially includes two opinions. One related to internal controls under government auditing standards, and then a report on your single audit. So a single audit is the audit we do where we take a more in-depth look at the federal dollars that are spent by the state. So both of those opinions were unmodified for clean opinions. Within them, though, we do know that there are some findings that we will get to. But first, I just want to point out in this report on page 7 is essentially the schedule we receive of the federal dollars spent within your federal awards. So you can see from this schedule, there was about $1.7 million in federal expenditures. An unusual caveat is that one of the grants that you received, the disaster grants, you don't put on this schedule necessarily in the fiscal year that you spend them. You can't put them on this schedule until they are obligated by the federal government. And so you had expenditures that really happened in prior fiscal years that are on this schedule because of that obligation date requirement. So they were obligated during the fiscal year we're looking in, so that means that's when they hit this schedule. So I like to point that out because sometimes people will wonder, well, we didn't know we were going to have that much in federal expenditures this year. That seems really high. That's right, because some of them were previously spent. So I just want to point that out. We're going to look at page 9. So this is a summary of essentially what is in the opinion letters. This covers 2 different sets of findings. This covers findings at the general city level and then findings at the federal award level. So from this, you can easily decipher that we had at the general level, material weakness, significant deficiency, and non-compliance that we considered material to the financial statements. And then we also had a significant deficiency under federal awards. So we're going to talk about each of those findings. I'll try to give you some background information and we'll get through that piece. So page 10 starts the first finding. So in our scale of looking at issues, material weaknesses are the most significant. Then we have significant deficiencies, and then we have something called management comments. Management comments are usually more best practices or, hey, here's something that you really should fix before it gets worse or more out of hand. The more serious issues are those significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, just so you know where these fall in the spectrum. So finding 1 relates to prior period adjustments. And in the fiscal year 23 audit, there were several prior period adjustments done to correct balances at 6/30/2022. So if you go to your report that says financial statement on the front, and if you turn to page 3-34, this page gives you a summary of what those adjustments were. So for the most part, on a day-to-day transaction kind of issue, financial statement transactions are relatively accurate in the places that they're recorded. A lot of the issues that we identified, and actually to be more accurate, that Finance Director Moriarty identified when she came here, is that items were not necessarily put into the correct funds or activity levels. So a transaction would come in or money would go out and it would be recorded for the most part. It just didn't always make it to the correct bucket or within the correct fund. So this did affect several pieces of the financial statements. And I'm guessing maybe there will be some questions on specific ones, I'm not sure, but this gives you the snapshot of what those adjustments were. So that's why there was the finding. You can obviously tell if you start with the fund balance at June 30th, 2022, take a look at what the adjustments were, and then you get to the fund balance. We're in a position that we're recording in these financial statements. Because I was not the auditor last year and I have no previous workings with the finance team here, I cannot say why things were or weren't recorded the way that they were. It's not my job to stand here and point fingers at anyone, just to point out to you that these were the issues that were identified. They've been corrected to the best of our knowledge, and you should be in a better place for moving forward. Okay. The second finding was a material weakness and non-compliance and relates to budget overages. So if you go to page 4-1, and this is also going to help answer a question that came up previously in this meeting. So I'll try to address that as well. So this page is the general fund original and final budget compared to actual numbers. And the good news is your general fund actually comes out better than what was budgeted. So I think that's a great area to focus on. When we look at expenditures, though, even though your expenditures were under budget, we have to look at the various line items that flow through your financial statement and say, were you over or under budget, specifically for the state's purposes, were you over budget by a material amount? So in these financial statements, there's a couple line items here that are over budget by a material dollar amount, hence the finding. This was such a huge transition year. Your finance director would have had very, very hard time getting you a budget that was accurate to the way I know she would like it to be. So I don't envision this being an issue going forward, but I obviously can't promise you that. So, few lines that were over budget. The question that came up earlier in the meeting was, why is public safety under budget by such a significant amount? The reason, a good portion of the reason of that is because within the general government category, there is a department code that's used to accumulate fringe benefit cost. There was not a great allocation process in place to push that out to the department levels. The finance director and the city manager agreed that for this year, those costs would reside in this general government line instead of being pushed out, which is partially why then your general government line ends up being over budget. So the thought is that now going forward, the finance director has more time to look at exactly all the benefits that are going into that area and getting them allocated correctly and or assigning them correctly at the time they're incurred. So they automatically go out and have to be allocated. They just directly hit those expenditures. So hopefully that answers at least part of the question raised earlier. All right, page 11 of the findings. So within the general area, we did have a significant deficiency in that compliance item. So there are various policies that the state common law requires to have in writing. And within the condition paragraph here, we list out what some of those are that are on our checklist that we have to take a look at. And I believe most, if not all of these, have already kind of been in process within your board to have that resolved. So we've been making good progress there. Generally, it wouldn't be to the level of a significant deficiency because generally, when we come into a client, you might be missing one or two, but this was a pretty significant number of them that covers a pretty broad range of transactions. And then the third finding falls underneath the federal award category. So there's something out there called uniform guidance, and these are the rules that govern federal dollar expenditures. And within that uniform guidance, there are many written policies or written procedures that they want to see in place for any unit that receives federal dollars. And so that there hasn't been a formal policy that encompasses all of that uniform guidance policy language. So that's another policy if you haven't already taken a look at. That one might take a little bit more time because there's a lot more to it, but that one should be cleaned up as well. That one, sometimes people find you come up with your policy the first go around and then maybe work with that policy for a couple of years and you end up needing to do some tweaking because either you received a federal grant where you didn't anticipate needing to cover an area and then you need to add it in because there's multiple sections to cover. If you don't have grants that encompass one of the sections, you don't have to come up with policy for it, but sometimes you might have to go back and do that. So those were kind of the high level findings there. We'll go through the financial statement report next. So if we go to page 1-1, this is the independent auditor's report. And the city received an unmodified or clean audit opinion. So that's the opinion that you want us to issue. Those are good words to hear. And we wouldn't expect any less going forward. You would have to have a material issue that we know about for us to give you an opinion that would be different than that. So getting into some of the numbers, section 3 is the start of the financial section or financial statements for the city. So the statements are broken up into something that we call government-wide statements versus fund level statements. Generally, when you're making decisions, you're looking at fund level data to make those decisions. The report starts out with governmental-wide activity instead, and then works its way into the fund financial statements. So one item I just like to point out on this statement of net position, because sometimes if I haven't already covered this at a meeting, people get worried about this, but you have governmental activities on page 3-1. And if you work your way down to the bottom of that column, you see that there's net position and it's a deficit, and it's a deficit of a fairly significant number, 34.2 million. That is not uncommon to see that deficit number because you have retirement and healthcare systems in place. And because you have that net pension liability and that OPEB liability out there, that significantly impacts this particular line of the financial statements.
Could you show me where you are again?
Oh, yeah. So if you go to page 3-1.
3-1.
So as you pay down those liabilities, that will over time help relieve that deficit. Also, if you are adding back to fund balance at the fund level, that can positively impact this number as long as you're not adding back to fund balance with restricted dollars, because we break those out obviously based on the restrictions listed here. So I did just want to bring that to your attention so that you don't see it later and think, wow, gosh, there's this huge deficit and she said nothing about it. That is fairly normal for the environment that you're in. We would expect eventually, I'm not sure in all of our lifetimes that will go away, but eventually, hopefully it will. Okay, so moving on to page 3-3. So generally in a presentation, I would focus on your general fund because that's the most significant operating fund that you're working with. That's usually what boards want me to talk about. So I will spend a little bit more time on that fund and then just point out some things about some other funds as we go here. So general fund ended the fiscal year with about 2.2 million in cash reserves, and then had pretty significant amounts due from other units of government of about 1.5 million. A large portion of that is related to the FEMA grant dollars. So there's 900,000 related just to FEMA dollars that hadn't been received at the end of the fiscal year. As far as liabilities go, nothing unusual or out of the ordinary from what we would expect to see. You have your general accounts payable, you have things related to payroll, and those accrued liabilities, and then some unearned revenue from dollars you've received but haven't made the appropriate expenditures yet for, so you can't record the revenue. What is unusual to most when you look at this statement is this category called deferred inflows of resources. And this baffles even accountants sometimes. It's this category that the GASB created for these items called unavailable revenue. So if you book a receivable, so you say, hey, FEMA, I know you should give me $900,000, but 2 months come after your fiscal year end and FEMA hasn't been gracious enough to deposit that money in your account, you can't count that receivable as revenue. You have to move it back to your balance sheet to something called a deferred inflow of resources. So again, this is not uncommon to see this particular line. It's just yours is larger because FEMA takes a long time to pay. And that was a large amount of expenditures that ran through that grant. Once those dollars are received, then this reverses off the balance sheet and will be recorded as revenue at that time. If for some reason, then FEMA says, you know what? We're not going to pay you, or we're only going to pay you half of what was obligated, then there's no impact to your fund balance because it never artificially increased your fund balance to begin with. You would simply just remove the receivable and remove the deferred inflow of resources. Okay, moving down to fund balance then within this fund. So at the end of the year, you ended in total with just over 2.4 million. Of that, about 2.06 million was actually unassigned fund balance. So if we look at that as a percentage of expenditures, it's roughly 16%, just under 2 months worth of operating expenditures on hand in your fund balance. GFOA recommends that really you don't have any less than 2 months. So you are a little bit on the lower end of where I would think your fund balance should be. That may be something to consider as you're moving forward, working on your budget, just that you're, 2 months is kind of the bare minimum you want to be at, and maybe work at increasing that slightly. You don't have to have outrageous amounts of fund balance. You obviously have to balance providing services to your residents with the cash inflows that you have.
But noted with the FEMA money, we'd be at what, 21, Fiscal?
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
21%.
21%.
Yeah.
I always just caution.
No, I
Yes, with FEMA.
well aware. That's because it was reflected before.
Yes,
That's where the trend, that's where the change.
yes, yeah. Yeah, it makes me nervous when people
Oh, no.
count on FEMA because I've seen.
But that's the point, it was counted before. That's why we have that drop.
Yes, you got it, so. Okay, let's flip over to page 3-5 then. So this also covers general fund, and we'll just look kind of high level at revenues and expenditures. Total revenues came in just under 13 million. Obviously, the most significant portion of that is your property tax revenue. That came in at about 9.2 million. On the expenditure level, you're at about 12.6 million. So when we take the difference of those two, we get about 318,000. But then we have some other items, most significantly for you, transfers in and out that we have to factor in. So the net change in fund balance was a decrease of about 140,000. And I know some of you may be thinking, well, we had this $1 million surplus appropriation amount that we had out there that we thought we were going to have to use against fund balance. And so this number, the 140,000, comes in better than that, except you have to go back to the comment you just made. We had to take away that FEMA revenue that was previously recorded, which is reflected within that prior period adjustment. So when you add those two together, you get pretty close to that $1 million. Your other major fund, which is your major street fund, had an increase in fund balance this year of about 307,000. So not necessarily a fund you accumulate a lot of fund balance in, but as you have different projects, obviously the fund balance level there will fluctuate. Okay, 3-7, we changed gears to your proprietary funds. So these funds operate on a full accrual basis. So if they have any long-term obligations or capital assets, those are reported within these funds. Which is different than your general fund, which does not account for items such as those. So your water and sewer fund, which is your most significant enterprise activity, had total assets of about 19.4 million at the end of the fiscal year. The majority being wrapped up in capital assets. So that was about 15.7 million. On the liability side, really your current liabilities are not too significant. That comes in at less than 682,000. And then you do have some non-current liabilities, the most significant being that net pension and net OPEB liability. So that brings your total liabilities to just shy of 3.9 million. And that gives us ending net position of about 15.9 million. The majority of that is your net investment in your capital assets. So that leaves just a very small amount left in unrestricted net position. Your marina fund actually has more net position than your water and sewer fund. At the end of the day, that comes in at about 621,000. So that fund is pretty good. If it were me, I think in the water and sewer fund, the unrestricted feels a little low. But I haven't seen a long-term capital improvement plan to see what that looks like for your city. So that we kind of have to weigh what current dollars you're working on to maintain your system versus what long-term projects and potential bonding you might have to do to know if that's a good level for you or not. All right, 3-8 then, let's just touch on revenues and expenses for water and sewer. So operating revenues came in at about 5.6 million versus your operating expenses were just over 6 million. So that fund did have an operating loss. There is property tax money that's collected and some of the federal grant dollars flowed through that fund. So overall, the change in net position of this fund was an increase of just shy of $2 million. And you can see there, this fund also had some prior period adjustments that were done as well of about 3.1 million. Okay, 3-10 is your fiduciary funds statement. And this was a statement that was missing in your previous financial statements. So when you have healthcare benefits that you're going to pay in the future, and you specifically set aside money to start covering some of those and start accumulating, then those dollars have to be reflected on this statement so that we can see what's out there that's covering those dollars. The other piece that was missing was related to the current tax collection fund. So a lot of people really struggle with this one because usually you get to the end of the fiscal year and your balance sheet is zero or pretty close to it. Maybe sometimes you have a little bit in cash that hasn't cleared out, but it's usually zero, and that's okay. What the Governmental Accounting Standards Board wants to see is the activity during the year, which you will see on the following page on 3-11. They want to know how many dollars are flowing in and out of that fund during the year. So they recognize that at the end of the year, there may not be much there, but what happened during the year? And so you can see there's property tax collections and then payments out of property taxes out of that fund. And we just needed to make sure that was reflected in the financial statements. All right, and I think that's where I'm going to stop in here. I'm not going to go through all the footnotes because it's almost 9 o'clock and we could be here till tomorrow probably if we wanted to go through all the footnotes and supplementary information. But I do want to cover the governance letter, which I think should be tucked in the back of your financial statement report. It should just be a staple document. So this letter outlines some of the required communications that we have to make to you. So I'm going to cover a few of the items throughout, and then we'll talk about the management comments. But page 2 talks about the qualitative aspects of accounting practices. And there's 3 bullet points there kind of in the middle of the page. And these are accounting standards, 2 of them that should have been implemented in prior years, but weren't. And then 1 that you're right on track for implementing this year. So 84 and 87 should have been implemented in your previous fiscal year, and 96 was supposed to be and was implemented this year. Towards the bottom of that page starts another bullet point list of areas that we identify as sensitive or significant areas of estimation in the financial statements. So the first one is the useful lives assigned to capital assets. When we look at your government-wide capital assets, the impact isn't as significant as those capital assets in your water and sewer system, because within that fund, you're really looking at operating expenses, right? When you're setting those rates. And so you want to know if my system's only going to last 20 years, I don't want to depreciate it for 40 because I'm not going to recapture what I need to as quickly. But you also don't want the opposite. So significant area of estimation, we did not see any issues there. And then the other two are the net pension and net OPEB liabilities. Those are based on actuary information that is provided to the city. On page 3, then, we just like bullet points, apparently. There is a section for significant risks. So within an audit, when we first start one, we always presume there is some level of risk. 2 areas of risks that we always have to incorporate are areas where management can override controls and the possibility that revenue will not be properly recognized. So those are always risks, no matter what. Then for your particular audit, we had 3 additional risks. The implementation of new accounting standards, because we need to make sure that gets done right, both in the year it's supposed to happen and then for the few that we knew needed to be caught up. We take a look at information technology controls. And then because there was turnover in some of the positions and especially in the finance department, we generally will include a risk for that because we don't always know what the new person knows and what level of comfort they're going to have. And so it just increases the amount of information that we look at to make sure that something big isn't. Towards the bottom of this page, there's a section for corrected and uncorrected misstatements, and I'm going to talk about the uncorrected misstatement. So GASB 87 relates to leasing activity. And some municipalities have decided that they are going to record the leasing activity no matter what. Some are only recording it if it's material. And so we took a look at the leasing activity and the finance director took a look at leasing activity. And for you, the net effect of what was going to end up on your balance sheet was less than 50,000. So when we're talking about 19 million in assets for that fund, 50,000 wasn't significant to go through the administrative calculations and recording of that. So management decided to pass on adjusting for that, and that's completely fine. So with that, we're going to move to the last page, page 6. And we'll run through these management comments. So the first one relates to journal entries. This is an area where generally we don't see as many controls as we would like to as auditors. And we always hope places get better in this particular area. So we had an issue with there being entries prior to the new finance director coming on board that were posted that we couldn't always get to the details for. So we like to see if there's an entry, then there should be all the support that goes with that entry and that backs up and explains why the person made the entry, and that was lacking. The other issue, and this is really a struggle many places, is that the finance director is posting entries without another level of approval. And so in a good internal control environment, we would have one person posting entries and another person approving those entries. So we just want to see more segregation of duties in that area. I understand it is really a challenge to make that effective because generally your finance director is the one that knows the accounting treatment for things. But sometimes they need to post an entry. They can't delegate that. They just need to. But they should still have someone at least doing 10,000 foot. I call it the smell test. Like, does that smell right or not? And have some basic understanding of what they're doing. The next item relates to the accounting records. So the state of Michigan has a new uniform chart of accounts, and the city should have implemented the new chart for this fiscal year that we're auditing. That has not been done yet. There was no way that the new finance director could have come in at the time she did everything that she already took care of and do a chart of accounts conversion. This process takes months and months and months. to get through. So I'm hopeful that she will have time, hopefully to get that done by next fiscal year. Other than being out of compliance with the state requirement, it doesn't affect the reporting you're receiving now. It's just cleaning up things and getting numbers in alignment with the new requirements. The third item on here relates to the distribution of tax collections. So as residents are paying their property taxes, money comes in, the city keeps some, and some of that money is paid out to other units. There is a timeline in place that has to happen by, and prior to the new finance director coming in, that was not always happening. So payments were getting made, just not necessarily as timely as they should be given the rules that are in place. So we would recommend that going forward, that's done timely. I believe since the new finance director has been here, they have been done timely, but we will continue to check on that. And then the last one relates to bank reconciliations not being completed timely throughout the year, and not having a second individual in place to do review of those reconciliations. This was more an issue prior to the new finance director versus now that she's here. Although I know when you first step in, it does take a little bit because sometimes you are in the process of figuring out how things happen. And so it's hard to 100% complete those, but definitely progress has been made since the new finance director came on board, and they're working on a process and delegating duties so that one person is doing the reconciliation, and then the finance director is likely going to be the one that reviews those. With that.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Questions from council? Mr. Wiener?
Let me just be the first to say, thank you, I appreciate this audit. Day and night compared to the previous audit that sat through. There's certainly, nobody wants to find findings, but the point is, Finance Director Moriarty, we're finding finance Director Moriarty is making the improvements that need to be done. I want to commend the work that you're doing. You're the right person at the right time. Again, this said, we now have much more cogent information to work with. And again, I'm very pleased that we're actually, overhauling the system and seeing improvements. So again, thank you very much. Again, I found this a lot more informative. So thank you, Ray. Yeah, thank you.
Other comments?
I second that statement. Hats off to Ginger. She's got a lot. It's a big lift. I appreciate you supporting that as well. It's good to hear.
Well, you've clearly both gone over and above what is expected. Ally, I do hope you will let us know at what point we've exceeded the scope of what you've set out for, so that we can give you the resources that you need. So thank you very much. Second only to our moral integrities or financial integrity, it absolutely has to be in place. We've been on a journey as we continue to professionalize that, and tonight is a huge step in that direction. And having Ms. Moriarty on our team, we're clearly very fortunate. And I hope, Ginger, you'll make sure that you know to come to us with other additional resources that you might need in order to get the job done. Because I believe, Ms. Barnes, when we spoke, you said we're probably on about a 3-year journey. Hopefully we can accelerate that and truncate that with the talent that we have on board. But we need to be committed to providing those resources that we can be working at a best practice level. So thank you very much. And I think, too, to support the effort, Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield, as council member for finance, working in partnership with Mr. Kohler, perhaps we can charge you with making sure that the corrective action plan, not that we have any worries with Ms. Moriarty, but, just to make sure that you two are in touch with the kind of resources that might be necessary to ensure we can accelerate that plan. And I think some of the other areas of risk, too, would be our self-insured status and trying to overcome obstacles such as that are going to keep us from financial integrity and solvency going forward, our OPEB. And in fact, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those expenses are 84% of our total liabilities. I mean, that's a huge number and concern that we need to tackle. So the more that our finance team can be working in partnership. I would like to make sure that you're coordinating that, and then along with Baker Tilly too, and the recommendations that are being made on that front. Are there other comments, Mr. Wiener?
One thing I forgot to mention, I'm heaping praise on Finance Director Moriarty, but also City Manager Seisland deserves credit because I think he's the one who kicked off this process that we found Ginger, brought her on, and is overseeing this overhaul. So again, I think this is the right direction.
Mr. Kohler?
Yeah, and obviously, we're giving some praise. Obviously, I will thank the prior council that selected the new auditor, right? Even though I left Big Four accounting after 14 years, I can never escape it, apparently. Being on the finance committee, so I do look forward to working with our new auditors and obviously Ginger as well. This was wonderful, as Councilmember Wiener said. This is great information to the public. I know nobody loves more than me the 8:45 on Monday night walking through financial statements. But I thoroughly enjoyed that, and hopefully the public can take a chance to look at that in the future. Easily understood, easy to follow along, so thank you for the presentation.
Councilmember Gallagher?
Thank you. Again, thank you for your work and your time. It's helpful to understand. And having a first look at it is great, and we'll spend some more time digging into it. And look forward to planning the budget in the future and having a clear understanding of all the finances here. As I'm looking at it, according to the document, we've used about $987,000 of our reserves this year. Is that correct?
Well, in general fund, about 140,000 was really this year. 847,000 of that really related to the previous fiscal year.
But it's consumed from our reserves, about almost $1 million in our reserves. If we continue at this rate, how long until our reserves are exhausted?
Well, you're not going to make it very long. If you broke even, you could operate a long time. If you keep doing that, you only have 2 million in fund balance. So
if we don't make adjustments within the next 2 years, then we'll be. And at 16%, you had mentioned was the target number. And if we continue in the path that we're going in our reserves, and I believe in June of 2021, we had about 4 million in reserves, and right now we have about 2.4, I think you said, which puts us in the past 2 years, we've spent about 1.6 million, or about 41% of our reserves over the last 2 years. If we continue down this path in the way that we're spending more than we're bringing in, when do you anticipate, or when would you anticipate that 16 million being in, or 16% being in serious jeopardy?
Well, if you're spending $1 million more a year, obviously you're going to be in trouble much faster than if you spend 100,000 more a year. So it all depends on what level of spending you're going to do, how fast that money is going to run out. So I can't really tell you that until I know how much you're going to overspend each year. Hopefully you don't overspend. Hopefully you start adding back to, or at least breaking even on that fund balance.
And I just had a question. Several months ago, I had asked Finance Director Jerry regarding, we've seen a significant increase in our health insurance expenditure over the last 6 months or so, and have an anticipation of it being up. Where would those numbers be reflected in these documents?
So health insurance expenditures within your governmental funds, they'll be in those various expenditure line items. So general government, public safety, public works, and then in your water and sewer, I'm not sure what the line's called, but I'll tell you. That's going to flow through the personnel services line for your enterprise funds.
Okay, and then thank you for that. And then the almost 2 million in the police fund that we haven't spent. If I'm understanding you correctly, and I may not be, so just why I'm having the question, is that because of reallocation from like moving buckets of money from one to another?
So there is, let's say there's a bucket out there that incorporates fringe benefit cost.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, there was some type of allocation we're not exactly sure how it was done, to take those fringe benefit costs and push them out to various department levels. This year, given the time constraints to complete the audit and just general operating knowledge of the city, that bucket was left intact and not pushed out to the departments, and instead flowed through on that general government line. So next year, you should anticipate that public safety is going to show higher expenditures than what it did this year, because they're working on the process to push those costs out throughout the year instead of having them accumulate in one bucket.
Okay, so I had a meeting with our finance director, I don't know, 6 months ago or so, and we were talking about the allocation of the cost of fringe benefits. And if I remember correctly, we talked about her creating specific buckets to understand where the cost of those fringe benefits were going to go. That feels a little bit different from what you're saying right now, that those buckets were going to be identified. Those fringes were going to be pushed to the appropriate buckets so that there was not a reflection of of more money being put into the public safety bucket, making it look like there was more expenditures there when they were actually to be put. It feels a little bit different from what you're saying, and what my understanding was what was going to be happening with the funds.
So I'll answer and then, because I think I know what she's saying. Because we have, so there's the big bucket that has all of the fringe, not all, but a significant amount of the fringe benefits in it. I think probably what you talked about is
they have a 101,850 for fringe and healthcare. You guys adopt a budget for that every year. I have gone through for fiscal year 2024, beginning in July, separated out each of the expenditures based on the type of fringe that it is. So now healthcare will be in one bucket, pension will be in a bucket, retiree healthcare will be in a bucket, and you'll be able to see each of the expenditures by department, each of those members that receive fringe benefit in fiscal year 24.
Okay, so not for this year.
I didn't go back and correct anything from the prior budget that was adopted for fiscal year 23. You had adopted the fringes in the 101,850. That's where they were prepared, that's where they were expensed, and that's where they were reported for this financial report.
So, okay, so you were, in our discussion, you were talking about what you were going to be doing for 2024 versus what's in here. So this bucket of this $2 million bucket is representative of all fringe. And I'm not sure why it would be less. I'm not sure if I'm understanding why it would be less if it's representative of all bucket, a large bucket, but I don't want to consume everybody's time here.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Are you trying to suggest, so if I'm reading this correctly, you're saying that, so we had 8 million budgeted for police and now it shows 6 million. You're trying to, it's not that money is not going to police, it's just being represented differently in a bucket. So it's not that the budget claimed 8 million is going to police and actuality was 6 million. It's just how it's being represented right now. I think that's where the discrepancy is.
So the money is going to the police department.
Next year,
Through fringes.
Next year, it'll all flow through your financial statements the way we would all envision that it's going to. And because of the breakdown that she's going to do for you with those accounts, you'll actually have more transparency because you'll be able to see the types of fringes versus just one fringe benefit line. So it'll actually make it
Which is what I was actually anticipating, Ginger. You were going to have it for us.
I think Controller might be able to help. Did you want to add something?
To do that for 23.
The costs have been incurred. We incurred the cost. That's it, right? That's all we have to say. Thank you for that. That's and then but I did have, if I have, since I still have the format, can I ask just one question, the auditor? For, just given your experience from other municipalities that find themselves in similar financial situations that we sit today, when you look at success stories of some of your clients or some of the stories you've read in the accounting journals, what have been some of the, just maybe just 2 or 3 we'll take now. I know we could sit here all night, but what are some of the most common solutions that we've seen that some of those municipalities have taken.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question back.
Sure.
When you say the position you're sitting in, are you
Yes.
talking about from internal controls or financial?
The great question back to me. It's not from internal controls, but from my finance perspective. Because, and you said earlier, you mentioned you used the word bond earlier tonight. So I'm just curious, just some solutions that are out there that, you've noticed elsewhere, different clients, some journals, the newspapers, what else you have out there?
Definitely. So from a water and sewer perspective, you almost have to bond in order to make the improvements that you need. There are very, very few municipalities that are able to raise cash as they go for those improvements. So you really have to look at your utility rates and make sure they are really at the level they need to be. And then if you're going to make significant capital improvements, likely you have to bond at some level. An area for improvement for your city specifically is looking at your self-insurance for healthcare. I think you can find tremendous savings there. I don't know what dollar amount, but I think it's probably pretty large. And I think that could potentially be the most impactful.
Great.
For your city.
Thank
So
you.
those are a couple.
Yes, wonderful. Great answer. Thank you so much.
I think the other, we work in union with not union, that's probably not the right word, with the other cities, right, as part of our health insurance. And it's my understanding the other cities are looking at moving away from that group insurance policy in order to save money. And maybe we should be looking to do the same.
Other questions, Mr. McMillan?
The FEMA dollars, in your experience, how long does it typically take for us to see the FEMA dollars?
Well, let me get out my crystal ball.
Generally.
I do not have a good answer for that. It can be years.
Councilmember McMillan, a good example, talking with one of the auditors that City of Midland had the dam break many years ago. And by the time when we were doing the audit together, Midland had not received its money from FEMA, which was, more catastrophic. Again, ours was catastrophic, but Midland lost a lake. That's 6 years ago. Same time, but dollar amount wise, so we're kind of in a guessing game for when it's coming. We did receive some of those dollars to date, only about 130,000. So we're still, waiting for the rest of that allocation.
That's why I really caution you to not think of that 900,000 as a part of your fund balance, because you just don't know. And you just don't want to depend on it. It doesn't show up.
All right, council, the motion up for your consideration would be to receive and file the FY 2022-23 financial report and single audit. And I would ask that we also include the corrective action plan in that. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Wiener. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Caulfield. Any further discussion? Clerk, can you please call that roll?
Councilmember Kohler,
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Weiner,
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan,
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. We have received and filed those documents. And again, sincere thanks to both Ginger and Ally for really pushing. Today's a huge punctuation point in our continuum to financial health and sustainability. So thank you very much for all that you've done. Okay, council, next on our agenda is the proposal for a new city publication. Mr. Seisel, we can get that motion on the floor and then give you the floor to speak and set the stage. Council, the motion would be to approve the agreement with Drive Creative Solutions to produce 2 magazine-style publications for a cost not to exceed $22,500. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Wiener. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by McMillan. Discussion. Actually, Mr. Seisland.
Yes. Scott, do you have any copies with you of your meetings? Perfect. Okay.
That's who that
So,
person is.
yeah, so I have Mr. Scott Chambers with me. He's from Drive Creative Solutions. Services. I was close. With
You're good.
All right.
You're good.
So we've been talking about that, looking to improve our communication with the city and, and in that effort, we've been using C&G newspapers sometimes. And so What I have with me is several copies of magazines that Scott does work with municipalities, the city of Mount Clemens, Chesterfield. And we'll pass those down. Also, let's see, we got Harper Woods, Centerline, Mount Clemens, Chesterfield Township. And so what Scott and Drive Creative Solutions does is they are responsible for graphic design, layout alterations, ad sales, printing and distribution for each edition. The municipality is in charge of gathering and supplying relevant information for the season. So whether you want to do a biannual or quarterly subscription-based newspaper or magazine is up to the municipality. We would propose based on the calendar year, looking at when these should come out. We're probably looking at a summer release, so just before Memorial Day. We would want this publication to come out and then have a fall winter session. So that would be later in the year. And again, this can include, finance, public works, city clerk's office, parks and recreation. There is opportunities to down the road if we want to create a city magazine that's distributed for residents. We actually have it as a cutout, or you want to have envelopes that, you want to be able to make it easy for residents to have a tax bill envelope already in the magazine. There's a number of solutions as well that, we could look into down the road of partnering with the public library, to share some of those costs and see if they'd be willing to come on, with a magazine or maybe even partnership with Grosse Pointe City. And so the unique thing too with Drive Creative Solutions is that not only is this Scott's bread and butter working with municipalities, but he also has this revenue sharing opportunity. So, and I will let Scott get into that portion and also just this discussion of what he's done, why he thinks he could bring a quality magazine to the Grosse Pointe Park. And so I'll let you take it away, sir.
Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. Really with the revenue share, what we do is we go out, we sell advertising space, then we provide a 40% offset of those costs of production and distribution of the newsletter. So the goal is to get it to $0. Not any one of those publications, just so all you know, is it zero just yet. So we have the print element and we're launching the digital element of that as well. So we've got it branded in the back portion of each newsletter. The front portion is all city specific information. The back portion is a community resource guide specific to that city that we're doing it for. So you'll see the break on that page. There's a page that does say community resource guide, and that specific one, it's Harper Woods edition. So from there, we're going to have the community resource guide of Michigan be able to brand it within each and every newsletter or magazine that we're putting out. So then basically what we're doing is building a network, and we're doing it organically through publications as well as what we do with the website. So I view that as a network with two platforms pushing that network as well. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've had success so far. So it's been nice, the development and growth of what's going on. And, clearly we appreciate the fact that, it makes for us to have this conversation.
I've talked with one quick comment. I've had a discussion with two city managers, the city manager of Centerline, as well as Harper Woods, regarding the work with Scott, and they approve, and it's sincerely helped out their communities. They said nothing but positive things too about that experience. So.
This is all very nice. Thank you for this. The only thing I have is here in Grosse Pointe Park, we all, and I'm sure it's other municipalities as well, we get plenty of items like this in our mailboxes, right? Myself or Councilman Conkle haven't made a front page yet, but maybe someday we'll get in there. But we get things like the fashion and all this, which are great to have for our businesses, right? I'm just hoping when we put these out biannually, assuming we have approval here tonight, that we just try to find our competitors' dates out there, so we're not, one in a pile, we stand out. That'd be my only comment here for this. Yeah.
Mr. Caulfield?
Just a couple of questions and a statement. So if we adopt this tonight, you're suggesting for this year a summer and then a fall winter.
Yeah, that's correct.
What would the goal be for the future?
I think the goal in the future would be quarterly.
To go to a quarterly?
Yes.
Okay.
That'd be the goal, but we'll see, if approved tonight by council, how this works, and we'll go for 2 for this year.
I guess, yeah, I love what I see. I guess my general overall concern is the administration is going to have to adopt this and provide a lot of input. And seeing that our history record with our last communicator.
They'll be different.
It's going to take every department head to put calendars together. And I mean, we have a lot of information to share, which is why I'm excited for this. I just want to make sure that we are actually committed to it.
Because that helps me too. I know that I babysit adults all day, and I'm not saying that for cities, but we had talked about what would the breakdown be? How would we go about gathering content, funneling it through so everything is done, cross the T's, dot.
Yeah, and the only reason I ask it, it's just, this is going to be a big commitment, and I love it, but it's going to be a commitment from every of your department heads. Share that information. That's why I was asking on the frequency of this. If we do end up going to quarterly, I mean, it is expensive, but if we can get into a consistency of this is coming out, to your point, on regular dates in the quarter, residents know this is a great resource. And I guess from a digital aspect, is that included?
Yep.
So this would be online as well.
We would provide a final PDF, low res that can be put up onto the site.
Okay.
Councilmember Gallagher?
Thank you. Thank you for presenting. It looks like a nice document. I have several questions, actually. You don't talk about the cost comparison to what our current spend is against this proposal here, which I think is an important piece of information to understand, given the amount of importance of not spending more money than we have to when we're actually looking to save money. One of the major concerns from our community is that we and our mayor and city manager have committed to pledging more communication to our public, who are often complaining about the fact that we're not communicating effectively and efficiently. We are historically putting out a quarterly newsletter, which has just references to the park and the information in it. By pledging to communicate more efficiently, I'm not sure the right direction to go is to move from a quarterly publication to a biannual publication that costs more money. If we talk about digital, we can quite easily upload a PDF of our communicator up online, no disrespect to what you're saying. And while ads may sound interesting in creating an offset of a budget, are those ads going to be a deterrent from people actually looking at and reading the information that is on hand?
Can I touch on that?
Please.
That's the reason all the ads are in the back. Everything in the front portion is strictly for the park or any of the other newsletters that are up there that you could. Just so you're aware.
Thank you. And I would agree with Councilmember Kolar here that document looks much like many of the other documents that come into our home in terms of magazine publications. I know when we do get the communicator, it's a much different feel and it's a much different read. And I know that the community has expressed their desire to see that on a regular basis. In this instance, I would ask that we as a board and the administration actually work to get right what we have before looking to change to something new that is potentially more expensive. And I would also ask that if we are going to look for a new vendor to present that information, the appropriate process would be to put it out to bid for other vendors so that we can ensure that we're getting the most bang for our buck. I will be voting no.
Other discussion, Mr. Fuller?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate both these concerns and comments made by my council members here. And I'm speaking now as someone who's on the Community Engagement Communications Committee. Councilmember Drever is the chair of that committee, myself and Mayor Hodges sit on that there. So these are good challenges for the three of us to think about in those committee sessions there. I know it's something that we are all committed to, all my colleagues and I, to improving communication, as Councilmember Gallagher said there. I'm very excited about this. I know that speaking with Nick, we're committed. This is just a piece of the puzzle, right? Is what this is proposed right here. And I know all of us want to focus on that communication that Councilmember Gallagher talks about there within our community there to making sure that, yes, we have something quarterly, biannual, annual, weekly, whatever that is, but we need to make sure that we improve in all those channels there. And I know we're committed to that here on this board, but also in the discussion we have. The good challenges in front of us in the communications committee.
Yeah, just one more. Has this been run by the committee?
Has this
Proposal been run by the communication committee?
No.
you probably should start there.
And something to that point, which I did talk about earlier, but probably the website is something, again, I want to go run through Councilmember Kolar and Drever, because that'll be a huge process undertaking that. I want to have these gentlemen and the mayor take a look at it.
Well, some of the feedback I did get from Councilmember Drever in advance of this is he does feel there's a lot to flesh out and really asking the question of why and is quarterly or, what cadence is the right cadence. So perhaps there is more to consider and we should throw this to the community engagement committee to evaluate further and come back with a recommendation. So it's a holistic communication strategy. I don't know, City Manager Seisland, if that puts any unnecessary barriers out there or unintended implications. Certainly.
I think just communication, the committee meet and discuss further.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to suggest,
Yeah.
because the person who I would have liked to have this conversation is Councilmember Drever. So he said, can we table this maybe and bring it back in February? I mean, it's not.
I like where you're going with that. I'm fine with tabling. My only concern is if we're going to commit to this and we want to get a summer presentation out, I mean, how you're going to have to get a date. There's going to be a lot of data. So I don't want, my point is I'm fine until February, but if this doesn't get approved in February, you're looking at a fall.
Yep.
Well, because we've got to promote all the summer programming and there are
We gotta
revenue
get out before
implications.
Labor Day.
Yeah, I don't want to put any
So
stress on it.
given that, what is your recommendation, City Manager? Do we have other ways of promoting that programming so we don't miss our targets?
Obviously through social media and other aspects or getting out, the previous communicator. But I'd be happy to work with, and try and get a communications committee meeting pretty fast here to discuss.
Dare I say, can we try to kill two birds with one stone then? In terms of if you have a communications meeting, can you figure out some of what would, if this gets approved in February, some of the things that would be needed to bring it together? So if you're going to have a communications meeting, looking at adopting this, you can at least get started on some of the other information that you would need, because whether we work with this vendor or not, I would assume it's going to be kind of universal what you're going to need to put together. So.
All right,
These are good
so
examples.
Yep.
do we need a motion to
Understanding that
table?
finance is fine.
I have just one comment. Do you work with city officials to make sure they hit their deadlines? Is that part of your job or you just say to them, you give us what you're ready for and then, or do you have communication?
Yeah, it's each municipality we work with, it's different.
Okay.
So it's almost like how are things being done internally there? And then the things that we need to do to communicate effectively with them. So we end up holding hands, walking down the path the right way. I know it's a tough question to answer because there's so many variables.
Sure.
From one city.
But you're not going to just let them, you'll be working with them and helping them along.
Oh, yeah.
The other question.
I'm a squeaky wheel, yeah, because if I wasn't, nothing would get done. So I am a very proactive individual, as you can see with each publication. As an example, we work with the Grosse Pointe Board of Realtors. Bob Taylor supplies us real estate statistics for each publication. I want good value for readership, right, with what we've got going on. Same thing, Jenny Betcher with the Grosse Pointe Chamber. They supply the content, for Harper Woods. For the portion that we've got, the community resource guide, right? Because we control all the content in the community resource guide.
So we could add in their articles from various residents, right?
You could.
Okay. Interesting things. I'm trying to think of things that why people would want to read it in addition to information about the park. And who determines the value of the ads?
I do.
Okay. Is that something that we would have input on too, or is that?
I would share with what the advertising rates would be and the reason why.
Okay.
As an example, I would view Grosse Pointe Park on its own probably having the same rate structure as what we've got with the city of Harper Woods, based on how many residents and businesses that gets mailed to there. It's a higher number, but there's also a different value proposition with what we've got in Grosse Pointe Park, as far as businesses that are thriving more so compared to Harper Woods.
I guess, and sorry.
Well, the reason why I'm asking, I don't want to turn it into just an advertisement book.
Well, and I totally agree with you. And I think that's why I raised the comment about where it's going to need the administration, not just you, but all of our department heads' commitment. Because if you look at some of these examples, there is great information that we should be sharing regularly from water department, what to not flush and not, I mean, leaf pickup to programming in our parks to public safety to what to do when the power goes out. I mean, there is and my point is if we can get this into a cadence where it is now the go-to publication for our residents, it's not gonna happen overnight, but. Yeah.
Well, these are details I think our committee can flesh out, so.
And I,
But
they're in
we
good
do have
hands.
a motion on the table. Mr. Wiener, would you elect to withdraw that?
Yeah, I want to defer to Councilmember Kolar and Mayor Hodges. You're on communications. I mean, how do you guys feel? Do you want to table this thing?
I'm fine with that table with the expectation that we'll meet before February and come to February with recommendations. Yes, absolutely. Yep, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Mayor, I spoke for you as well.
No.
I'll speak for Mayor, or Councilmember Drever, and he could beat me up in the alley
think that's
later,
the-
but,
Clear direction. It should be
Wonderful.
part of a holistic plan.
Yes, sure.
It's one piece of the puzzle, and we do need to make sure it's the most cost-effective solution as well. But I do feel bad, Scott, for keeping you here all night. You deserve some credit for that. And thank you for that. And hopefully we'll be working together at some point.
Yeah, I love it. One closing thing I would like to say is all the feedback we received, especially when it comes to Mount Clemens and Chesterfield, because we just wrapped up. Our first publication for both of them was the fall. The winter ones just came out, and the amount of feedback and what they're getting back from residents and business owners alike, very well received in the community. So Mayor Crop over at Mount Clemens was she's on cloud nine as far as being happy about what that is, because this is unique. Most municipalities don't have this situation where there's a revenue share with advertising. With my background, I worked with these two before. My background is come from publishing. I was a newspaper for over 20 years, so I'd like to think I know what I'm doing, and I'm steadfast with stuff, and I don't mess around. That's my big thing. I'm here to get a job done and to help communities look as good as they want to. So thank you all for the time.
Thank you for that. You take care. Happy to be here.
Same to you. Thank you.
All right, council, we now move into council comment.
We need to vote on that.
It's withdrawn.
It's withdrawn, so we're just gonna come back. Okay, sorry. I want to make
Council
sure.
comment. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring to the table?
I have two things.
Mr. McMillan?
Just want to reiterate and thank Ally and Ginger for their hard work and Yell. Also, I'd like to dovetail in thanking everybody on the Beautification Committee, because these are the commissions that happen and make our city great. So I think they all should be commended.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Ms. Gallagher, Councilmember Gallagher?
Thank you. I just want to, I want to come back to the conversation that was cut off and the movements that I made. I'd just like to say that you're suggesting that we received a packet of rules from our old city attorney, Jake, in November of 2019. And then we voted on them in January of 2020, in November of 2020 when we were voted in.
No, we voted in
2021.
2021.
And we,
voted in.
right, we
got-
received a packet,
at
which
that
is
point,
what you're
November.
referencing, which city manager is referencing, I have. And we voted on in January of 2022. And the document that I have includes the language we voted on. And then to make a suggestion that we had a third vote in July, why would we receive, or it maybe didn't suggest we didn't vote. We did in our phone conversation. You suggested we voted on it in July, but we had only one vote. And why we would receive a document for rules in July of rules that were voted on in January of 2022 is beyond me. I would like to say, the other comment that I would like to make is the council conduct with one another. The rules in this document state that during council discussion and debate, no member shall speak until recognized for the purpose by the chair. After such recognition, the member shall confine discussion to the question at hand. And to its merits, and shall not be interrupted except by a point of order or point of privilege raised by another member. I did not yield the floor. I had not finished my comments, and this board interrupted my comments and my questions regarding a motion that was on the table. This is not appropriate behavior at this council. By my making those comments, being interrupted, and Councilmember Wiener allowing for a motion to be made to quiet the discussion is not appropriate. This document was presented without all of the information being presented to this council and all the changes being made. That is unprofessional. This board may vote by a majority to put that document in place. So be it. To your point, they're not enforceable rules. It also stands here that there's so much evidence that shows that this document is a document that wasn't presented and wasn't presented appropriately and clearly to this board to maneuver rules that clearly minimize the opportunity for this board to impact the agenda and to impact conversation is not appropriate. And I find that if we are going to just pick and choose the rules that we want to apply when it's appropriate for those in the majority, what is the point for us sitting here? This is about leadership and respect and character and truth. And what has happened to maneuver to change those rules is not truth. And I see it and I recognize. And the expectation that I now, when receiving documents, I will go through them with a fine-tooth comb. It is my responsibility. And it is my responsibility to bring them to the attention of this board. I just think that it's not appropriate and it's not professional. And for the mayor to interrupt my comments and allow a motion to be made to silence the debate is reflective of lack of courage to have a true debate on this board.
Mr. Kohler?
I forgot to mention this earlier, Nick, as part of your report, but the Parks and Rec Department and the snowmen throughout the city. And I saw today the one, I think it was Mario at part of the bike shop there. So just wanted to thank the public for putting those all together. I know they're great. My daughters love it. And I see others out there doing it with their family members. I think it's a wonderful tradition we have there. So thanks to all the families who volunteer for that as well. We have to mention that as part of your report, but brought it up now. There you go.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Other comments, council? Just to remind the community that if you're interested in serving on a board or a commission, welcome your application. You can do so via the website. There are vacancies that will be coming up in the coming months. Would love to have a good, fertile pool of candidates for that. I would also like to take a moment just to acknowledge some lives that have been lost since we last met. Diane Van Boom was part of the Grosse Pointe Park dispatch team and our admin team. Very sad to see her passing in these last few weeks, as well as Public Safety Officer Joel Poirier. Hope I'm saying his name. Say that again, Mr. Poirier. I unfortunately did not get an opportunity to serve with him, so I did not have firsthand experience, but certainly know he was very well regarded by the community and by the public safety team, and would really like to recognize his dedication and commitment to the community and just take a moment to acknowledge the passing of those two lives from our community. Thank you, council, for that moment. And then on to happier, well, I don't know, I haven't seen a score yet, but hopefully happier things are happening on the football team. Mr. Caulfield, did you have?
No, don't say that.
Sorry.
He wants to watch.
Must be in the cloud of secrecy.
No, I apologize. I did have one.
Yes, Mr. Caulfield.
At our last meeting, I had asked, are you guys working on about the appointments process? I had asked that you would come back with a process for appointments for people in commission to apply, and
how we're going to.
I think what you're looking for is clarity,
Yeah,
a spreadsheet basically
Yes.
of the appointments, when they're up.
And then notification.
You know, what the obligation, like, make sure we're compliant with DDA by.
Yep, so the city clerk and I have discussed, we did have the holidays. One thing, I don't know if you guys saw in your packet today too, as part of that process that, typically what we had done is new appointments, they would have their application, but I also, I think Councilmember Cole actually suggested too, of including future or current volunteers, as part of the packet. So everyone in the community can see too. So that's going to be a moving forward.
Okay.
That is always going to be included. TIFA, DDA, Planning Commission, that'll be considered for, again, this body to consider and take a look at. But to your answer.
So that's the process.
That process.
We
But
are
I
getting
want to
it.
get you a further process that you can see.
And Clerk Butler, thank you. She's made
Yes, thank
some real progress on that. So, because it's important that we are compliant and that, and have the enough opportunity to properly deliberate on those items.
Mhm.
So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for reminding us of that. Any other comments from my fellow council members? All right, we will close that portion of the meeting and move into our public comment portion of the meeting. Those of you sturdy folks who have stuck with us to 9:50 p.m. We'd love to hear from you. This is your opportunity. You do have 3 minutes. We just ask that you state your name and your street, and I invite you to approach the podium if you'd like.
I've already said too much.
And you're wearing a Bears. It started
All
on
right, I guess there will be nothing from our wonderful public, so we'll close the public comment portion of the meeting. We now move into closed session. I would invite a motion. Moved by Wiener, seconded by McMillan. Thank you. Clerk, can you please call that roll?
We should put a little definition.
Yes, move into
Yeah.
closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 to discuss personnel
Yeah.
review.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Kohler,
Yes.
Councilmember Gallagher,
Yes.
Pro Tem Caulfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Wiener,
Yes.
Councilmember McMillan,
Yes.
Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. We now are in closed session. Thank you to those of you who are here. You're more than welcome to stay. I do not have a good estimate on how long it will be, but we will reconvene in open session. Yes, Mr. Lindbergh.
Did you just guess me?